Our witnesses today are Mr. Oliver Stone. Mr. Stone is an Academy Award-winning director and has directed more than 20 feature films, including JFK in 1991. Mr. James DiGenio. Mr. DiGenio is a researcher and expert on the assassination of former President Kennedy. He's an accomplished author and has written numerous books regarding the assassination of President Kennedy. Mr. Jefferson Morley. Mr. Morley is a researcher and expert on the assassination of former President Kennedy. He is currently the editor of JFK Facts. I now recognize Mr. Morley to give an opening statement.
Thank you to all the task force, the House Task Force on Declassification. It's an honor to testify before you. It's a solemn responsibility to report on the disturbing new revelations that have emerged from the newest JFK files. And it is a grave matter to assert that CIA officers were culpable or complicit in the death of a president. So I want fact checkers to have all the evidence that I'm used to support my testimony today. I speak with the benefit of 3 decades of reporting on the JFK story. My first article on the role of the CIA in the events that led to the assassination was published in the Washington Post 30 years ago this week. As I pursued this story, I practiced the tried and true techniques that I learned at the Post. Knock on doors, get 2 sources, follow the money, start with the cover-up and proceed to the crime, and always ask the question, what did they know and when did they know it? I did not start with a conspiracy theory, and I did not go looking for a smoking gun. I started with an open mind and looked for a fact pattern. As I interviewed and reported and researched on this story and the role of the CIA, I consistently avoided judgment on who was responsible, individually or institutionally. My research and reporting simply didn't give me a clear answer to the question, who killed JFK? What was clear over time is a new fact pattern. In the spring of 2023, the CIA fully declassified for the first time its pre-assassination file on Lee Harvey Oswald, the accused assassin who denied killing the president and was killed himself in police custody before he could defend himself. I have a copy here of the CIA's pre-assassination file on Lee Harvey Oswald, and I'm submitting it for the record. The declassified Oswald file runs to, and fact checkers can confirm this, 198 pages. In the fall of 1963, in November of 1963, this file was held in the office of James Angleton, counterintelligence chief at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, not 5 miles from the White House where President Kennedy lived and worked. To be sure, the declassified Oswald file is not a smoking gun. I showed it to journalists whose judgment I trust, and they shrugged. They said this is evidence of incompetence. CYA, they said, cover your ass. I didn't quite believe that, but I couldn't prove them wrong until March 18th. That was the day that the National Archives began posting long secret JFK assassination records that had been withheld from public view for decades. I started by looking at 9 declassified documents about Mr. Angleton. He was the man who compiled the Oswald file. And when I came to a long secret transcript of Angleton's testimony to the House Select Committee on Assassinations in 1978, my reservations about passing judgment on the responsibility vanished. One newly declassified passage showed that Angleton had lied under oath about his surveillance of Oswald's correspondence while he lived in the Soviet Union from 1959 to 1962. And that, for me, was a tipping point. The transcript, which the CIA withheld from public view for half a century, confirmed a disturbing fact. James Angleton is the 3rd senior CIA officer known to have lied under oath about what they knew about the alleged assassin Oswald before JFK was killed. The first was Deputy Director Richard Helms. He lied to the Warren Commission in May 1964 when he said under oath the CIA had only, quote, minimal information about Oswald before JFK was killed. 198 pages of information cannot be truthfully described as minimal. The second CIA officer who lied was George Joannides, chief of the Covert Action Branch of the Miami Station in 1963. His agents in the top-secret AMSPEL program generated propaganda about Oswald's pro-Castro activities both before and after the president was killed. 15 years later, in 1978, the CIA inserted Joannides into the House JFK investigation, and he blocked any investigation of contacts between Oswald and his AMSPEL agents. Obstructing Congress cannot be considered evidence of incompetence. And this is what I believe in summary. One false statement might be incompetence. A second false statement might be CYA for the first false statement. But 3 false statements by top CIA officers about Kennedy's accused killer, that is a pattern. It's a pattern of misconduct. It's a pattern of malfeasance. If 3 police officers lie about their knowledge of a homicide defendant, that cannot be considered exculpatory evidence. To the contrary, it shows guilty knowledge and criminal culpability. It is, in a word, incriminating. The new fact pattern leads to a new conclusion. We know now what they knew about Oswald and when they knew it. We know now that Richard Helms, James Angleton, and George Joannides were responsible for or complicit in the death of the president, either by criminal negligence or covert action. My recommendations to the task force are 1, secure and release the personnel file of George Joannides, and 2, ask the CIA to provide a public statement answering the question, why did these 3 men lie to JFK investigators? The answers will help fulfill the task force goal, the president's goal, and the people's goal of full and complete JFK disclosure. Thank you.
I now recognize myself for some questions. Mr. Morley, why do you say that the Oswald file was sitting on the desk of James Angleton a week before the assassination? Can you really prove that?
Yes, I can. In the Oswald file, on page 254 and on page 275, you'll see a routing slip on 2 FBI reports about Oswald. And on November 15th, 1963, and November 14th, 1963, you'll see the initials JAR on the routing slip. That stands for Jane Atherton Roman. She was the liaison officer for Mr. Angleton. So when she signed for those 2 FBI reports, we have proof positive that they were on Mr. Angleton's desk.
Are you saying that the 3 men, Angleton, Helms, and Joannides, plotted to kill the president?
No, I am not saying that. I'm saying that they were engaged in covert activities related to Lee Harvey Oswald that have never been disclosed. And that's the imperative for the task force, to obtain those records of that secret operation.
Real quick, I'd like to enter into the record a document that was actually one of these declassified documents of the CIA rejecting the lone gunman theory. With that objection, so ordered. Mr. Morley, who was George Joannides, and why do you emphasize the importance of getting this file?
George Joannides was a career CIA officer. In 1963, he was chief of the Covert Action Branch of the Miami Station. His agents had contact with Oswald before the assassination. His agents in the top secret program, AMSPEL, generated propaganda about Oswald's pro-Castro activities both before and after the assassination. When Mr. Joannides was questioned by congressional investigators here on Capitol Hill in 1978, he was asked who was running these Cuban students who had all this contact with Oswald. The investigators had no idea that they were looking at the answer to their question. And Mr. Joannides, who had been running that Cuban student group, told congressional investigators, "I don't know. I'll get back to you." That was obstruction of Congress. That was an obstruction of an investigation of the president's assassination. His records have never been fully released by the Central Intelligence Agency, and they obviously should be.
Mr. Morley, I know you didn't say this explicitly in your testimony. I just want to clarify. I think it's good for the record. Now, we know that your research, of course, is very focused on what the U.S. government knew about Lee Harvey Oswald. I think you made that also very clear. You believe Lee Harvey Oswald fired the shots who killed President Kennedy. Is that correct, sir?
He was not solely responsible for the president's...
The microphone.
No, I don't believe that President Lee Harvey Oswald shot President Kennedy. I don't think the evidence supports that.
You don't think the evidence supports that he fired the shots?
He might have fired a gun. He was not the intellectual author of the president's death.
Okay, and I wanted to clarify, because I think the firing of the shots, just wanted to clarify that you do believe that he fired the shots.
No, I don't.
Okay.
That has not been determined by the evidence.
Okay. Well, I want to just get you to clarify that. Now, I want to also just say a few points. Now, you, Mr. Morley, you have said that the CIA was not forthcoming with Congress in past investigations. Correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay. I know you have said that you also you have said that CIA counterintelligence was also either new information or could have been responsible in some sort of broader plot. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Okay. But you have said, I think, just to correct what you said, you have said, though, that there is no direct evidence as of today that the CIA committed the assassination. Is that correct?
I would say that the fact pattern that has emerged in last month shows culpability or complicity in the president's death.
But no direct evidence. Is that correct, sir?
We have very direct evidence of the CIA's surveillance of Oswald.
No, I'm not asking about that. I agree with you, sir. I mean direct evidence that the CIA is connected with the assassination.
All of these events connect the CIA to the assassination.
And I understand that, sir. I'm just telling you my interpretation of what's been presented is that I have not seen direct evidence. I'm not saying, by the way, that that the CIA or the FBI haven't been involved in a variety of covering up information in the past. We know that to be true, but I just want to make sure that I'm very clear that I have not seen direct evidence yet.
Okay.
Mr. Morley, I want to ask you about Mr. Angleton. Who is Mr. Angleton?
James Angleton was the chief of CIA counterintelligence from 1954 to 1974. In that period, he was one of the most influential men in the CIA, serving under four different directors.
And what did he tell the Warren Commission in 1963 and 64?
When the Warren Commission came asking Angleton for information about Oswald's visit to Mexico City, Angleton wrote a memo or told his aides that he wanted to, and this is a quote, wait out the commission. He did not cooperate, and like Richard Helms, they both basically fooled the Warren Commission and deceived them about what they knew about Oswald.
And later, we now have, because of the work of Mr. Stone and others, we have Mr. Angleton's testimony that he gave to the Assassination Committee, the House Select Committee on Assassinations. What insights did we gain from that?
This document was not fully declassified until March 18th, and in there we learned for the first time that Angleton had lied to the House Select Committee when he testified in October 1978 in an office building about 2 blocks from here. And that was never known before until March 18th that he had done that, and that is one of the most significant revelations to come out of this. People will say, oh, well, there's nothing new here. No, there's something new here. The New York Times, the Washington Post have never reported that that 3 top CIA officials lied to the JFK investigators.
Yeah, and the fact that we have 3 CIA officials that lied to Congress for decades, and that it took decades to get documents that should have been released that had very compelling information, and it took 60 years to get that information released, is appalling. And that's why I want to say thank you to all of your work in helping to get this information released.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. You need us consent?
From the National Archives, a NARA letter dated 2017 that the CIA withheld docs regardless of the JFK Act.
Without objection, so ordered.
Another document from the archives that the Warren Commission did not have original classification authority.
Without objection, so ordered.
And then another document from the archives that the FBI's reasoning for redactions dated 2017 in the NARA letter.
Without objection, so ordered. I'd like to now recognize Mr. Crane for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. Mr. Morley, do you believe that Oswald was recruited and being handled as a source for the CIA?
I believe Oswald was an agent of influence who was manipulated by the CIA.
Okay. And as I was going through some research, one of the things that I found interesting, and please correct me if I'm mistaken here, any of you guys on the panel, but Mr. Underhill, who was a CIA agent himself, who apparently left D.C. the days after the assassination in a hurry, Gary Underhill then confided in a friend that a clique within the CIA had assassinated Kennedy. He also told his friends that he may need to leave the country and that he feared for his life. Mr. Underhill was then found dead 6 months later. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Morley. Do you find those types of stories surrounding Mr. Underhill to be credible?
Mr. Underhill was hardly alone in suspecting CIA involvement of the assassination. President Harry Truman suspected it, President Johnson suspected it, and President Richard Nixon suspected it. So I think that Gary Underhill was a man who worked in the intelligence community and was in a position to know something. His story's not confirmed, but it's consistent with what lots of other people thought.
What was his title? Do you remember, Mr. Morley?
He was not a CIA employee. He was an arms dealer who assisted CIA in acquiring weapons and shipping them.
Do you know how he died, Mr. Morley?
I don't know anything more than was reported in the documents.
Mr. Eugenio, do you know how he died?
Eugenio.
Sorry about that.
You're not the first one.
Yeah. Do you know how he died, sir? Underhill. Mr. Underhill.
Gary Underhill. Do you know how he died?
Gary Underhill?
Yeah.
Gary Underhill his body was discovered by his friend Asher Burns, who was a magazine writer at the time. And the door was open, ajar a little, and Burns entered the room, and he thought Underhill was sleeping. But as he approached the body, he saw that there was a hole, a bullet hole in his head, all right? Asher Burns was so disgusted by the investigation that came after that he didn't even want to talk about what had happened. But one of the things about the Underhill death is that for him to have taken his own life, the gun was in the wrong hand. Okay? All right? So that was one of the most puzzling things, about that particular case. Underhill has been, I believe, very much ignored, by a lot of people. And I'm glad that this memo finally got out there.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Stone, one of my last questions for you before we wrap up this hearing. Would you recommend that the task force send a letter requesting NBC make a clear copy of the film?
Certainly, that'd be very interesting. Mr. D. Eugenio and I saw a film of a potential Oswald watching the motorcade go by, which means that he was downstairs at the time of the shooting, and that would be very interesting to see. We couldn't say for sure that was Oswald, but it's a man who looks like him. So I think it would be a very good idea for the task force to subpoena NBC, which has the original film.
Yes, they supposedly have the original. Yeah.
They have the original film. They've refused it twice to be shown.
Yes.
And if this task force could easily get that, and the American public should have a right to judge for itself who was standing there.
Who can kill a general in his bed? Overthrow dictators if they're red. Fucking amen. CIA man. Who can buy a government so cheap? Change a cabinet without a squeak. Fucking amen. CIA man. Who can train guerrillas by the dozens? Send them out to kill their untrained cousins. Fucking amen. CIA man.
No fiction. No fiction. No fiction. After all that, I don't ever want to hear nothing about no conspiracy theory ever again. Katherine, Massey, Book Club, Context of White Supremacy, Worthless Negro from Virginia, Gus T. Renegade, in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy, information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today, MLK Day, like I planned, April 4, Friday, 2025, so I have been told. 57 years from the date that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Tennessee. Very important for our subject matter today. We are reading The Assassination of JFK, Echo from Dealey Plaza, the true story of the first African American on the White House Secret Service detail and his quest for justice after the assassination of JFK, which was 5 years before the assassination of MLK in 1968. We're picking up last week Mr. Bolden, who's about to have to do the lie detector test because they said, oh man, you've been in cahoots with these old no-count niggers and stealing, looting, all the rest of it, and we got you, Mr. Bolden. We know it. We know it. Go on and fess up. Wouldn't even let him go to the bathroom or call his wife. Remember last week? Now they're going to make him do the lie detector test. What we heard messed up my audio sequence and everything because I had ideas to play other content, but oh no. That was from April Fool's Day, April 1, just 3 days ago of this very week. That was Jefferson Morley, Oliver Stone, and James D. Eugenio. They all gave testimony at the House Oversight Committee's task force on the declassification of federal secrets. 2 hours. I mean, it was so much information in that full segment. I tried to pick out some of the portions that I thought were most important, particularly for our purposes. But wow, I would strongly encourage. Really, that's almost in line with Dr. Welsing when she says you can't talk about racism, white supremacy if you haven't read Racial Matters. Man, because the JFK assassination is connected to that 1978 House Select Committee hearing on assassinations. It was on the JFK assassination, the MLK assassination, the Robert Kennedy assassination, COINTELPRO activities. All of that was lumped in together because it is all connected. You're talking about the same white people in many, many instances, some of them that we just heard by name, involved in many of these same cases of suspicious murders and assassinations, many of them non-white people that have never been solved, including Patrice Lumumba, Minister Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, Dr. Martin Luther King. You heard Jefferson Morley, white man. He said that the CIA had 198 pages on Lee Harvey Oswald before the shooting, and they went to exact dates in November of 1963, before the assassination of the president, that the CIA had 198. I mean, that's scientific, precise detail. Dates, signatures. This is how we know they were very informed about this fella that nobody can keep tabs on. Come on. When they gave the information about George Ioannidis, Joannides, and that he lied to the House Select Committee on Assassinations about the CIA's involvement with Lee Harvey Oswald, and then putting out all these lies both before and after the assassination of the president about his association with these communist Cubans and all the rest of it, and maybe some Castro loonies did all of this, that they lied about all this. That House Select Committee on Assassinations, I keep saying that hearing was disrupted in November of 1978 by what? That CIA medical experiment in Guyana, Jonestown, that involves some of the very same names. I thought it was also super important when Mr. Jefferson Morley, he was asked directly is there any evidence that Lee Harvey Oswald, first it was, do you believe that Lee Harvey Oswald did the shooting? And he said the evidence doesn't show that. I heard that before, but I thought that was so important to get that House testimony on the record. There's no evidence that Lee Harvey Oswald did this shooting. No even evidence that he was present on the 6th floor at the time of this shooting. No evidence of that either. And then he said, well, there's no evidence of direct CIA involvement. And Mr. Morley kept going back and forth and saying, hey, all of this constitutes direct evidence. You have a fact pattern of lies over and over and over. That in and of itself is culpability. Criminal, really, because that's obstruction of justice. Master deceivers. And Lee Harvey, there being no evidence that he fired the shot, it has such an O.J. Simpson. You have decades, man, more than a half century. People just say Oswald assassinated Kennedy. He's not a suspected killer, nothing. They never had a trial. And it's the same thing as with Orenthal James. There is no evidence. Even if you think O.J. did it, nobody saw O.J. Simpson stabbed no one. They don't have no murder weapon. The exact same thing with Oswald. Exact same thing. You don't have no fingerprints on this weapon. Nobody saw him there. He said he didn't do it. He did it, and that's that. Getting the testimony that you have James Angleton. His full name, can I get it one time? His full name is James Jesus Angleton. That is no joke. James Jesus Angleton. When I'm going to go and testify before the House Select Committee on Assassination, I'm going to wait them Negroes out. I'm not going to tell them nothing. I'm in it, that right there. Master deceivers, because willfully deceiving, willfully concealing pertinent information. You got a president dead with his brains out in the street, and I ain't gonna do no snitching. That is lying. Obstruction of justice, I think they call it. Perjury, because you got these folks going out and lying and what have you. And I thought it was so important. Last week, Mr. Bolden, he said he thought there was a conspiracy. He thought there was more than one shooter. And I think one of our listeners wrote, and he said, how did he jump to that conclusion? You heard this week in front of the House Committee Task Force, former President Truman, former President Johnson, and former President Nixon all suspected CIA involvement in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Wow. Wow. I don't want to hear nothing else about no conspiracy theory and all the rest of it. Just wow. We will get to it. Abraham Bolden, The Echo from Dealey Plaza, Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy.
Overt. Sometimes even covertly overt. Fucking amen. CIA man. Who's the agency? Well known to God.
The polygraph room must have been the only room in the building where the windows had been closed all day. The air was stale and dry, and the heat was oppressive. I was sweating all over again, but when I asked to open a window, Agent Jordan got visibly annoyed. "This will only take a minute," he said irritably. "I don't want to open a window because the room should be as quiet as possible." Jordan asked me if I knew how a polygraph machine worked. Even though I answered that I did, he proceeded to tell me anyway. He showed me the blood pressure cuff and the leads into the machine, the electrodes that sensed chemical changes on the skin of my hands, and the needles that recorded my reactions during the test. Jordan clearly wanted to get on with the test and flew off the handle again when I asked to go to the bathroom. I really didn't care, though. I just needed to breathe some fresh air. When we got back, Agent Jordan slid a sheet of paper in front of me and asked me to sign it. It was a routine waiver stating that nobody had forced me to take the test. I signed, and we settled in for the examination. "Now," Jordan began, "you trust me, don't you, Abe?" "No." How could I possibly trust you after everything that has happened today? I have been lied to all day from Washington to Chicago. The Villa Park counterfeiting ring was a lie. The reason I was taken out of Secret Service school was a lie. Now you ask me whether I trust you. What kind of an idiot do you think I am? I'm just doing my job, Abe. I know that we used a trick to get you here. I had nothing to do with that. I was just following orders from Marty and Inspector Terina. You know that we have worked together in the past. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you, and I don't have anything personal against you. You know that, don't you, Abe? Why don't we have John Reed and Associates give this exam? I asked again. They're just around the corner. They are recognized experts in polygraph technology. They train polygraph operators from all over the world. I'm sure that if Martineau or Hanrahan called them, they would open up the office and— Are you saying that I don't know what I'm doing? No, I countered. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that I'm being accused of some alleged criminal act by the Secret Service, and you are a supervisor in the Secret Service. It would be much better if an independent person gave me the test. John Reed and Associates gives polygraph examinations to members of the Chicago Police Department when they have a problem. The company is familiar with this kind of thing. That way, the examiner would have no interest in the results of the test one way or the other. We don't have time for that, Abe. All I want to do is ask a few questions and see where we go from there. Don't you trust me enough to answer these few questions? I'm not out to get you. I'm just doing what I'm told. Jordan seemed calmer now. Now, let's get back to the questions. Is that okay with you? I guess so. I still have my reservations about your giving me the test. Agent Jordan began to ask me questions from a paper in front of him. I'm going to ask you whether or not you gave Jones a piece of paper. Did you give Jones a piece of paper? Did I give Jones a piece of paper about what? Just answer the question yes or no, Jordan snapped. How can I answer a question yes or no when I don't know what piece of paper you're asking about? I gave Jones a copy of the search warrant when we found the counterfeiting plant in his house. I gave him a personal history form to fill out when he was arrested by me in 1962. I gave him I'm not talking about those types of papers. I mean papers to be used in criminal activity between you and him. Then that's what you should say in the question. Show me the paper that you are asking about, and I can tell you whether or not I gave it to him. I don't have the paper to show you right now, Jordan said. Marty has it in his office. Well, how the hell can I answer a question about some paper that Mr. Martineau has somewhere in his office? I didn't know whether to be terrified or just disgusted. Why don't you go get the paper from Mr. Martineau and let me look at it? That's the only fair thing to do before asking me a question about some paper that Jones allegedly said that I gave to him. You don't have to tell me how to frame these questions, Abe, Jordan shot back. Just answer them yes or no to the best of your ability. Either you gave him a paper to be used in a criminal activity or you didn't. Then the answer to the question is no. Did you ever eat at a McDonald's hamburger restaurant with Frank Jones? I saw Frank Jones eating in a McDonald's on 69th and Lafayette. Just answer the question yes or no, Jordan hissed. I can't answer yes or no. Jones and I live in the same area of Chicago. Try to answer yes or no. It seemed that the only thing we were accomplishing was to crank up the tension. I sensed that I was into something deep here, but felt utterly helpless. I hadn't done a thing wrong, and here I was, trapped. I sat back in my chair and lit a cigarette, hoping to collect my thoughts, but Jordan snapped me back to reality. He tried to act sympathetic, but also warned me that I needed to cooperate, or he'd have to tell Martineau that I was refusing to take the test. Do you know a girl named Sandy Hafford? I know of a girl named Sandy who's involved in Agent John Russell's bond case, but I do not know her. Sandy was to be a government witness against Spagnoli in an upcoming criminal trial. Just say yes or no. Jordan's voice rose again. I know of a Sandy, but I don't know if it's that Sandy. There's a difference. Well, for the record, you know Sandy Hafford. If you want to put it like that, I guess I know her then. Have you ever lied to the state police? Lied about what? Anything you can think of, Jordan answered curtly. I don't see what the state police have to do with this. What I mean, Jordan explained, is about something big, something involving a lot of money. No, I said emphatically, my temper rising again. Look, I don't know what you guys are trying to pull, but I can tell you that it isn't going to work. You call me in here to take a polygraph test about some file, and then you ask me about the state police and a girl named Sandy. You're going to pay for this someday, Jordan. You're going to— Are you threatening me, Abe? No, I'm not threatening you. I have better sense than that. I'm no fool. Jordan tried to lower the tension in the room. Let's both calm down, Abe. These are just questions we want answered. He relit the pipe he'd been fiddling with throughout the interview, filling the room with smoke. Do you have to smoke that thing? I asked. The tobacco smells awful, and all of the windows and doors are closed. I can hardly breathe in here as it is. Agent Jordan tapped out the tobacco, put the pipe in his pocket, and then questioned me for another hour with mostly simple preliminary questions. Jordan suggested a break before starting in on the meat of the examination, and while he again denied any request for something to eat, we took a leisurely stroll together and found ourselves leaning on the railing overlooking the open central interior of the building. Jordan turned to me. Abe, I don't want to be personal, but how are your finances? I'm in pretty good shape, I answered truthfully. I'm not eating steak every night, but I'm living. You just bought a house, didn't you? Yes. After 8 years of saving and budgeting, my wife and I finally bought a little bungalow on the south side of Chicago. Weren't you trying to go into business for yourself? Jordan probed further. No, you must have your signals crossed. I'm not even thinking about going into business. Well, Jordan ventured, I understand that you and Agent Cross were going into business together. That's not true. As far as I know, Agent Cross is going into the tavern business with a man named Taylor. Cross has been visiting different real estate companies trying to find a good location. I looked at Jordan squarely. I'm doing all right. I don't need the extra money. Jordan walked me back into the hot, thick air of the examining room and carefully hooked me back up to the polygraph machine. When he finished setting up, he switched on the machine and started his interrogation. Are you Abraham Bolden? Yes. I saw Jordan make a mark on the printout with his pencil. Did you give a piece of paper to Frank Jones? No. Have you ever lied in an official report? No. Did you attempt to sell a Secret Service file to Spagnoli for $50,000? No. Did you send Jones to Spagnoli's house? No. Are you in Chicago, Illinois? Yes. Do you trust me? Yes. Are you telling the truth? Jordan paused and asked me to sit still for just a few minutes. He examined the printout from the machine for perhaps 10 seconds. You're lying, Abe, he blurted out. Look, we can save a lot of time if you'll just say that you tried to sell the file. Anyone that looks at this chart can see that you are not being honest with me. I'm not lying, Jordan. I couldn't believe he was trying to pull this stuff with me. You have to keep in mind that I've read Fred Inbow too, I said, referring to the expert on such examinations, whom we both had studied. I know the techniques of interrogation as well as you do, so don't try to pull any of those intimidating tactics on me. I know that I didn't sell any file to Jones or Spagnoli or anyone else. Will you take another test? Jordan asked. Why not? I answered wearily. If these tests will clear up this mess, I'll take another one, but don't tell me that I'm lying after you look at the chart for less than a minute. I happen to know that even the most experienced polygraph examiner cannot look at a graph for 1 minute or less and come to an accurate conclusion. I asked again to have an impartial outsider administer the test. arguing that most experts agreed that the examiner's attitude significantly affected the interpretation of the test. "Are you calling me incompetent, Abe?" Jordan snapped. "I'm not calling you anything. I just feel that we need to have someone impartial like John Reed over on Michigan Avenue, or anyone not associated with the Secret Service to give me the test. I think we would have a better chance at an unbiased reading of the results." "Then you're saying that you don't trust me, huh?" Jordan continued, taking his pipe back out of his pocket. "It's not that I don't trust you. The thing that puzzles me is the fact that you glance at the chart and right away you insult my intelligence and say that I'm lying. I'm trying to cooperate with you on this thing, but it seems that you are eager to trust Jones and are focusing your whole investigation on me. Like I told you, the last time I saw any piece of the Spagnoli file that you're claiming I sold to Jones was when I gave the copy of the summary report to Agent Conrad Cross, as I was instructed to do. Why don't you give Cross a test? You said that you gave the onion skin copy of the report to Cross. When did you give him the onion skin copy of the report?" "Look, Jordan," I said disgustedly, "I gave that onion skin to Agent Cross on the morning of May 8th. Cross was sitting in his office, and I took him the onion skin copy of the report. I put it in his hands and told him that Agent John Russell wanted him to read the report and write a synopsis of the Spagnoli bond case. What did Cross do with the onion skin copy of the report? Why don't you put him on the live box here and ask him? I gave him the report like I was supposed to do." "Have you seen the onion skin copy of the report since then, Abe?" "No, I haven't. I can tell you this, though. On May 15th, Agent Russell asked me if I had finished my critique of the Spagnoli bond case. I told him that I had not written it yet. He asked me what I did with the onion skin copy of the report, and I told him that I had given it to Agent Cross, as he had instructed me to do." Jordan wasn't ready to move on. "Why did you give the onion skin copy of the report to Agent Cross?" "I just told you that I was instructed to do so." "Who told you to give Cross the onion skin copy of the report?" "Agent Russell gave me the onion skin copy of the report sometime back in April. When he handed me the report, he had written across the face of the onion skin that after I finished reading it, I should give it to Agent Cross. I didn't have time to read the report right away because of my own work requirements, and Agent Russell said that there was no emergency in submitting the critique. I read the onion skin copy of the report on May 8th, and after reading it, gave it to Agent Cross. Agent Russell has all of this information. Didn't you ask him about the report?" I asked. "Well, we can't find the onion skin copy of the report," Jordan replied matter-of-factly. "Jones said that you had the onion skin copy of the report and that you offered to sell it to Spagnoli for $50,000. On top of everything else, it was completely outside the scope of a polygraph examination for the examiner to be providing this kind of information. So Jones couldn't be lying," I said sarcastically. "You don't think that Jones would steal a report and try to frame an agent, huh? You don't think that Spagnoli or Art Rachel, another defendant in the Spagnoli counterfeiting case, could have taken the report when they were in Cross's office on May 9th after we arrested them and brought them in? You haven't considered the possibility that Spagnoli and Jones are professional conmen, counterfeiters, and known thieves, huh?" "We have considered the possibilities, Abe. There are just too many things that Jones and Spagnoli told us that only agents knew. The only way they could have gotten the information was through an agent of this office. So you have excluded every other possibility without further investigation?" "I think so," Agent Jordan said. "So, as it stands, I am accused of trying to sell an onion skin copy of the report that I gave to another agent as I was told to do. You are also accusing me of giving counterfeit money back to Jones when the records show that those bills were last in the possession of Mr. Martineau." During the early stages of the interview, Jordan had mentioned that several of the counterfeit notes that had been seized by me in the Jones case were missing from the safe located in the office of the special agent in charge. When I reminded Jordan that Martineau and the acting assistant agent in charge, Stocks, were the only agents who had the combination to the safe, Jordan backed away from that line of questioning. Inspector McCann has accused me of not being a team player. It seems that all of your evidence against me, the bills, the report, was in reality in the hands of some other agent. That's strange. That's really a strange circle of coincidences. There's nothing strange, Abe. It was now getting close to midnight, yet the heat in the room had not let up. Jordan, who appeared to be just as hungry and tired as I was, made some adjustments to the machine and began the second test, which was virtually identical to the first, the same set of questions and the same answers. When we were finished, Jordan came over and unhooked me from the polygraph. He tore off the long printout and left the room. When the door burst open again, it was Martineau returning, trailed by Inspectors McCann, Turina, and Hanrahan. They lined up in front of me, while another agent took up a position in the hallway, just outside the door to the room. Martineau, his white hair plastered down with sweat, stared down at me and said coldly, "Abe, I have a warrant to serve on you." Chapter 8. Despite the hot, thick air in the room, despite the sweat soaking through my clothes, despite the scratching dryness in my mouth and throat, a chill rippled through my body. Martineau read the particulars. Here is a warrant issued by Federal District Judge William J. Campbell at 2 p.m. on May 18, 1964. You are hereby being charged with conspiracy to sell a secret government file to Joseph Spagnoli. I was 29 years old, on the brink of 30, the age at which my childhood vision would be realized. I could see it in Martineau's eyes and in the grim faces of the other men. The transition was near. My life as a Secret Service agent was over, done in by the service itself. I felt dazed and had to fight back tears. "You're making a mistake." Inspector McCann asked me to empty my pockets and to surrender my Secret Service badge, and then Martineau handed me a document saying, "This is for you from the Chief. From SAIC Howard Anderson, Personnel. To Special Agent Abraham W. Bolden. Subject, suspension of Agent Bolden. Having been arrested on May 18, 1964, on a warrant issued at 2 p.m., you are hereby suspended with pay for the period not to exceed 5 days. The urge to scream and cry began to subside, and things started coming back into focus. It had all been arranged. The charge and the arrest had been foregone conclusions before I left Washington. They had spirited me back to Chicago, all the while intending to arrest me before the day was over. Clearly, they felt some urgency, but I couldn't say why. Other questions raced through my mind. How had Jones or Spagnoli ended up with the onion skin copy of the report I had given to Agent Cross? What did McCann mean by accusing me of not being a team player? I asked for a phone book so that I could call a lawyer, and found the listing for George Howard, an attorney who had been my fraternity brother at Lincoln University. It was 12:30 a.m., but I dialed his number. "This is Bolden," I said when he picked up the phone. "I've been arrested." "You're kidding," Howard said. "Who arrested you?" I explained quickly that the Secret Service was charging me with trying to sell a government file. Martineau couldn't or wouldn't tell me where they were taking me for the night, so I asked Howard to call my wife to tell her what was happening. I asked if he would come the next morning to the Federal Commissioner's office to represent me, and bring my wife with him. Howard was as reassuring as he could be. "I'll make sure that your wife is there. Don't worry about a thing." Looking around the room, I saw that Special Agent John Russell, who had been at the center of the case Agent Jordan had questioned me about, had joined the other men in the room. Martineau got up and told me to follow Russell and wait with him in another office. Russell was the one who had written the report I was accused of trying to sell. Every agent in the office had been given an individual copy of Russell's report except Agent Cross and me. Russell sat me down in the other office and left to get a camera so he could take my picture. He asked Agent Stocks, who had been lurking around, to keep an eye on me. When we were alone, I turned to Stocks, who had acted as if he had had it in for me from the day I arrived in the Chicago office. It was Stocks whom the special agent in charge had ordered to stop telling nigger jokes in my presence. Right now, his very presence sickened me. "You're the one that's causing all of this trouble," I began. "You and Martineau sent me to see Jones, and now you're saying that my meetings with Jones were not official business." Stocks ran his stubby fat fingers through his black hair and said, "Looks like you're in trouble now. I didn't send you to see anybody." When I saw a smile crease his pudgy face, I exploded. "Listen, Stocks, I'm in trouble because of you, so you and Marty have won. You and your racist buddy Martineau have me right where you want me. Don't ask me any more questions about anything, because I would have nothing to lose now if I tried to break your damned neck. I'd rather that you leave this room." Agent Stocks merely smiled again and walked toward the door. He turned toward me, made a cartoonish face, and said with a snicker, "Y'all's the one that's in trouble." Stokes stood there watching the door and the hallway, smirking and casually jingling the loose change in his pockets until the others came back. A short while later, Martineau asked me if I would take another polygraph exam, which I refused to do unless it was administered by someone outside the service. When Martineau tried to tell me that they were only trying to help me, I blew up again. "I don't know what you're trying to do or why you're doing it. All I know is that you bring me back to Chicago on a ruse and accuse me of trying to sell a file that I didn't have. I've been here for 10 straight hours now without food. Jordan said that 2 of the counterfeit notes in the Jones case were missing. I turned those bills into you with the Jones report. Something very strange is going on in this office, and I don't see any of it as being a help to me." The words came pouring out of me in an angry torrent. Soon, Agents Stocks and Russell were escorting me to a Secret Service vehicle for the drive to the Wheaton County Jail, where I would be held for the night. Unlike Stocks, Russell squirmed in his seat, obviously uneasy about having to participate in this process. Russell had always been more than civil, respectfully asking for and listening to my advice with his cases, and my arrest wasn't sitting well with him. An officer buzzed us into the lockup and asked, "What do we have here?" "This man is Abraham Bolden," Stocks blurted out. "He was a Secret Service agent. He's under arrest for trying to sell a Secret Service file." Agent Russell cringed. He seemed both stunned and annoyed by Stocks' candor. "We don't want this to get out, though," he added quickly. "We have a man that we want to lock up overnight," Russell explained to the next officer once we were inside. I could see that his eyes, already red with fatigue, were brimming with tears, which he dabbed at with a handkerchief. The officers methodically took me through the humiliating booking process that we had taken so many prisoners through in the past. They went through my possessions, fingerprinted me, and then led me to a room to take mugshots. As I stood there under the harsh lights, a blank white background behind me and the black and white identifying sign in my hands, I could see tears pouring down John Russell's cheeks. When the sergeant was done with the photographs, Russell walked up, sobbing openly without embarrassment, and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Everything will be all right." I could contain myself no longer. The dam that had been holding back my tension, grief, and fear all day simply burst. "It's okay, John," I said, weeping. "None of this is your fault. I don't believe you had anything to do with this." With the ugly business of getting me locked up concluded, Agent Stocks turned to the officer and said, "You won't need us anymore, will you, Sergeant?" I'll never forget the sight of the 2 agents walking off down the hallway. Russell's shoulders shook uncontrollably as he continued to cry aloud, while Stocks wrapped an arm around Russell's shoulder in an attempt to console him. I had been taught to play by the rules and had always taken those lessons to heart. I had dedicated most of my adult life to enforcing the rules as an officer of the law, even serving at the side of the President of the United States. Now I sat in the stillness of a jail cell at night with my mind racing as I tried to piece together the series of events that had brought me there. Scenes kept replaying themselves. There were the racist taunts and vicious jokes of the other agents on the White House detail, the memorandum denying me a hotel room in Palm Beach, and the ugly drawing of the disfigured Negro on the back, the squaring off with Henderson in the cottage at Hyannisport, and finally, the inaction and utter breakdown of Secret Service protection as the bullets blew apart Kennedy's skull in Dealey Plaza. I suspected that all these events were connected to my undoing. Inspector McCann had been right about one thing. Kennedy was dead, and they could no longer count on my being a team player, if they ever had. From my bunk, I could glimpse the light of morning and hear the sounds of traffic outside. I could even smell coffee, and now realized that I hadn't noticed an entire night passing. A cart came by with bad coffee and even worse sweet rolls, waking up my cellmate, a stringy-haired Southerner who had introduced himself as Smith and said he was from Kentucky. I had told Smith my name was Al Baker, an alias I had often used in undercover work. It was still early when a DuPage County deputy sheriff came to unlock the cell. "This way, Bolden," he ordered. Smith raised his styrofoam coffee cup and a mock toast and said, "See you, Baker. Everything will come out all right." His face split into a slightly demented smile, and he added, "Hey, my name ain't Smith either. Hope to see you again someday." The deputy led me out to where Agents Stocks and Edward Tucker were waiting with a Secret Service car. "What's going on, Abe?" Tucker asked. Tucker had been in Hyannisport and had witnessed the incident between Harvey Henderson and me. It was Tucker who'd followed me outside to calm me down, and who went back in to confront Henderson about his comments. He took his job seriously and did it well. I started to explain how Frank Jones had accused me of trying to sell a government file. Tucker interrupted. "That's absurd. I don't believe a word Jones says. Doesn't Martineau realize that Jones is probably out to get you?" "We have more than just Jones," Stocks chimed in. "We have other evidence." As we drove, I filled in some of the details of my arrest the night before. Tucker listened with a mixture of sadness and concern. "Look, Abe, I don't know anything about this case. I was just sent to pick you up this morning. Tell me, who made the charge against you?" When he heard all the details of the allegations as related to me by Martineau, he was incredulous. "You mean they're taking the word of Spagnoli and Jones? You know, I remember when we tailed Arthur Rachel, we followed him to the south side of Chicago, and he got off at 55th Street and the Dan Ryan Expressway. How far does Jones live from there?" "Jones lives about 10 blocks from there," I answered. "Look, Tucker, I tried to tell Martineau and Inspector McCann that Jones said he knew Rachel and that Rachel's name had come up in my conversation with Jones on May 11th. For some reason, everyone is choosing to believe Jones. I don't understand it either." Marty Martineau had instructed the two agents to bring me to the U.S. Marshal's office on the 8th floor of Chicago's Federal Building. Perhaps I should have found comfort in the sight of the massive stone building, with its thick granite columns and ornate dome, representing a government committed to protecting the rights of its citizens. In that moment, though, it looked cold, imposing, and fearsome. Inside, we passed through the cavernous rotunda to the black wrought iron doors of the elevator, where the operator greeted me. "How are you doing, Bolden? I thought you were going to school in Washington." My voice was so shaky I could barely answer. Martineau was waiting on the 8th floor and ushered me into a private office. Agent Tucker sat quietly by my side, staring blankly as if stunned by disbelief, until a sharply dressed marshal strode in. "I've met you before, haven't I?" the marshal said to me with a smile when Martineau made the introductions. "Probably so, sir," I said, offering my hand. "I'm Marshal Tierney, and I'm sure that I've seen you here bringing in prisoners before. I'm sorry to meet you again under these awful conditions. I'll try to make your short stay here not too painful." Tierney arranged for me to be fingerprinted after the other prisoners picked up that day had all cleared out of the processing room. Even still, I remember scrubbing my hands hard when it was done, trying to remove every sign of my disgrace. Eventually, I found myself standing in front of the huge mahogany desk of the U.S. Commissioner, whom I'd known for several years. I'd brought more defendants before this cheerful man in the previous 4 years than the entire rest of the Chicago office combined. On this day, he somberly carried out the requirements of his task. "Are you Abraham Bolden?" "Yes, sir." "I have a complaint against you, charging you with violation of Section 201C, Title 18 U.S.C. Now, I must warn you that you do not have to discuss this matter with anyone, and that anything that you say in this hearing may be used against you. Do you have money to afford counsel?" "Yes, I do," I answered. "I have an attorney, but he is not here at the present time." The commissioner looked to the side of the room and addressed the U.S. Attorney, Charles Turner, who was standing against the wall. "Are you representing the government in the Bolden case?" When Turner answered in the affirmative, the commissioner suggested they proceed with the discussion of bond even though my attorney was not present, and asked Turner if he had a recommendation. "The government recommends a bond of $25,000, Turner said. The commissioner appeared irritated by the recommendation. He leaned forward in his chair and shook his head. "No, I'm not going to hold this man under such a high bond. He is married and lives with his family in Chicago. A bond is only for the purpose of ensuring the appearance of the defendant. I have no reason to believe that this defendant will not abide by the will of the court." "Your Honor," Turner protested, "the defendant is charged with a very serious crime. Under the circumstances, I don't feel that $25,000 is too high." Making little effort to conceal his annoyance, the commissioner declared, "The defendant is hereby held under a $2,500 own recognizance bond, and preliminary hearing is continued on May 21st at 2 p.m. He gathered up his papers to leave and handed me the bond to sign. Just as I finished signing, I heard a commotion at the door. In rushed my wife, her reddened eyes wide with disbelief. Behind her were my attorney, George Howard, my sister Cecilia, and my brother-in-law, John Griffin. My wife rushed up to me and with her lips very close to my ear said softly, "Everything is going to be all right. You were doing fine until Mr. Martineau came along. I knew that something was going to happen. I just felt it." The commissioner filled my attorney in on what he'd missed, and made it clear that he wanted to make sure I was accommodated as much as possible. I was free to go. Howard, my old college friend, did what he could to relax me, telling me to get some rest and asking me to come to discuss everything in his office later that evening. My wife and relatives took me home to our house on Sangamon Street. For the first time, I took a deep breath of relief as I stood in front of my own home, gazing at the green hedges and the young spruce trees in the front yard. That evening, my wife and I climbed the steps to George Howard's second-floor office. The lawyer waved a copy of the Chicago Sun-Times at us and explained that the case had made headlines. The paper laid it out in detail. According to the news account, I had been arrested for attempting to sell a government file to Joseph Spagnoli. Spagnoli had told his story this way. He had been arrested on May 9th in connection with the counterfeiting of U.S. savings bonds. After the arrest, Frank Jones had visited Spagnoli's house and over several drinks told Spagnoli that he had a contact in the Secret Service and could deliver the file to Spagnoli for $50,000. Spagnoli claimed that on May 11th, the day after Jones's visit, he called the Secret Service office and talked with the acting special agent in charge, Maurice Martineau, who told him that there was no truth to what he was saying. Martineau told Spagnoli that he was probably being conned. When Martineau failed to dispatch an agent to interview him, Spagnoli called a Sun-Times reporter, who came to the house to hear Spagnoli's story. The two called the Secret Service office on May 12th and again spoke to Martineau. This time, when Martineau realized that a reporter was interested, he agreed to meet with Spagnoli. Amazingly, the article identified me by name and address as the agent who stood accused and arrested by the Secret Service. "They seem to be resting their entire case on the testimony of this guy Spagnoli," Howard observed. Do you know him? Yeah, I saw him down at the Secret Service office. Did you arrest him? No, I didn't arrest him personally, but I was with a group of agents who arrested him on May 9th. Attorney Howard kept up his questioning. Did you ever talk to Spagnoli? I went on to explain our encounter. On May 8th, I walked past Agent Thomas Strong, who was standing outside of his office. Spagnoli was seated in a chair next to Agent Cross's desk. Strong and Cross share an office. Agent Strong told me that he had to make a run to the washroom and asked me to watch Spagnoli until he returned. He asked you to watch Spagnoli? Yes. I just stood inside the doorway leading into the office. Upon turning around and seeing me standing there, Spagnoli asked, Are you a Secret Service agent? I told Spagnoli that I was an agent, and he said that he didn't know that they even had Negro agents in the government. Then Spagnoli said, FBI men ain't like these other cops out here. They don't take bribes like these other cops, do they? And what did you say? Howard asked. I told him that there are thousands and thousands of FBI agents and that there might be a few that weren't quite right. That did not please Howard. Why did you tell him that? Wouldn't it have been better for you just to ignore him? Well, he caught me off guard. I didn't expect a question like that, so when he asked it, I just gave him my own opinion. Do you think that he was offering you a bribe? Why did you think that he would ask you a question like that? No, he didn't offer me anything. Seeing what has happened so far with his charges against me and all, I think that what he was really asking was, if he were here to claim that an FBI agent had tried to get some money out of him, would anyone believe him? And what do you know about this file, where it is and who has it now? Howard continued. With careful questions, George Howard got the story out of me. Agent Russell had given me an onion skin copy of the report. He told me to read the report, write my comments on it, and pass it along to Agent Cross. On the morning of May 8th, I handed it to Cross while he was seated at his desk and told him that Russell wanted him to comment on the report. I went back to work on my own cases, and when Agent Russell asked me about the report on May 13th, I went to Cross and inquired about it. Cross told me that he had lost the report. He had read it and set it down on his desk, and then never saw the report again. On May 9th, the day I stood in the doorway of Cross's office to keep an eye on Spagnoli, the desk looked clear, as if someone had just cleaned it. I didn't notice any report on the desk. I couldn't see if Cross had been in his office at all during the time that Spagnoli was there. Other agents used Cross's office to question Spagnoli while Cross worked in an office across the hall. So Spagnoli asked you about FBI agents while he was in the office where the report came up missing? Yes. Okay. Howard nodded. Now, let's get to Jones. Where does he come into the picture? I want you to tell me the truth now. If you can't tell me the truth while your wife isn't here, we can ask her to wait out in the reception area. I have to have the truth if I'm going to defend you. I don't want any surprises coming down the line during the hearing or the trial. I could see that Howard was a thorough and meticulous lawyer. I explained how Jones had called the Secret Service on May 11th and specifically requested that I be sent out to talk to him. Agent Stocks, who at that time was acting assistant special agent in charge of the Chicago office, told me about the call. At first, I refused to go meet with Jones. I had placed 2 cases against him and was concerned that meeting with him without some sort of cover could be dangerous. I told Howard that Martineau had insisted that I meet with Jones or resign, and had accused me of trying to pick and choose my cases. I gave Howard the details of my meeting with Jones on May 11th. Jones had thumbed through the fishing guide and claimed to know Arthur Rachel. Jones and I had gone to the park and had subsequent conversations in which he pretended to be trying to help the Secret Service. George Howard listened intently, taking detailed notes, until he was able to put together his own understanding of the situation. From what I can make of this, Bolden, you were set up. The only question is who set you up and why. Jones has everything to gain by getting you in trouble with the office. Spagnoli could have stolen the file when he was in Cross's office and may have had some prior association with Jones. They're both counterfeiters. The third problem is your relationships with Agent Stocks and Agent Martineau. Mr. Martineau could have killed this whole thing, but he chose to arrest you and end your career with the Secret Service. If either Stocks or Martineau acknowledged that they sent you to see Jones, then there is no criminal case. We could defend it as an assignment that went wrong, take the suspension or reprimand, and move on. However, as long as they deny that you had an official relationship with Jones on that day, what you have is a criminal conspiracy outside the knowledge of your supervisors. By that time, it was after 10 p.m., and Howard wrapped things up. He told us to go home and get some rest, and that he'd arrange for us to talk again before the hearing on the 21st. George Howard was a slightly built man, but he cut a dashing figure. He was confident, sharp-witted, and eloquent, and anyone who saw this well-dressed young man with the big, booming voice in action in the Cook County courts would remember him. Howard had worked hard to get where he was, driving a Chicago Transit Authority bus while he attended John Marshall Law School, where he finished near the top of his class. His record in state court was very good, but the fact was that he had very little experience handling criminal cases in federal court. With my limited resources, he was the best attorney I could afford, but I knew he would do everything he could for me. Once Barbara and I got home, I peeled off the clothes I'd been wearing for 2 days and took a long, soothing shower. "They came and searched all over the house Monday night," Barbara said as I crawled into bed. "They took my typewriter and a lot of papers from your files in the attic. The agents tried to take the Christmas card and picture that President Kennedy sent you, but I made them put it back in the attic. There were 3 or 4 Secret Service agents with some Chicago policemen, but they wouldn't tell me anything about what was going on." The intrusion had clearly troubled her. "They searched in here, too. When they finished, I went and looked in the drawer where I kept the extra house money. $400 bills were gone from the drawer where I kept them." "Are you sure that the money was there?" I asked. "I'm positive," she said adamantly. "I knew that you were going to school, so I drew out $400 bills from the bank and put them in the top drawer right there. I put them on the right side of the drawer in a white envelope. They told me to leave the room while they were searching. I sat in the dining room. They were all over the place, the attic, the basement, and the back porch. As soon as they finished, I went straight to the drawer and looked for the envelope, and it was not there." "Maybe they took it to see if the bills were counterfeit," I suggested. "No, I doubt it. With all of those Secret Service agents in the house, you know they don't have to take the money to see if it's counterfeit. And why didn't they tell me they were taking it?" she asked, getting visibly more upset. I did my best to calm Barbara down, and we agreed to bring it up with George Howard the next time we saw him.
Now, it doesn't matter now. It really doesn't matter what happens now. I left Atlanta this morning, and as we got started on the plane, there were 6 of us. The pilot said over the public address system, "We are sorry for the delay, but we have Dr. Martin Luther King on the plane, and to be sure that all of the bags were checked, and to be sure that nothing would be wrong on the plane, we had to check out everything carefully, and we've had the plane protected and guarded all night. And then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out, or what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers."
Did you mean to imply in JFK that the U.S. government might be implicated in the assassinations of both Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy?
Yes.
MLK Day, Katherine Massey Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. So glad we read this book at this moment, especially since we've been talking about the CIA for the past year. In fact, even what they had to say at this April Fool's Day testimony, the task force with the House, Oliver Stone, Jefferson Morley, Eugene DeJunio, their testimony, it reminded me, I guess who was with us on the program this past, what was that, Sunday? Yes, Sunday. Joel Whitney. And he was talking about all of the CIA efforts and Richard Wright, George Plimpton, Rumble in the Jungle and all that. And he said, the CIA, an imperial history. That was even brought up during the task force testimony. Everything except Patrice Lumumba name. Talking about all the CIA projects in South America. Where is Jonestown? South America. That Jonestown wasn't said explicitly, but they did mention the CIA projects in South America, throughout the continent of Africa, all over the world. I don't want to hear nothing about no conspiracy, nothing, ever again. Katherine Massey Book Club. The number 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. This kind of another low-key fail. I wish I had been aware of this when Dr. Welsing was still with us, because I strongly suspect Dr. Welsing would have known about Mr. Bolden. They're close to the same age group. Chicago. I mean, I am sure Dr. Welsing went back to visit and kick it with her family and friends and sister, Lauren Cresslove, and everybody at some point during the 60s. Even, she's finished and doing her doctor thing and all that good stuff. But I mean, I'm sure, even if she wasn't there every day, I'm sure she kept up with the news. Mr. Bolden, this was in like the New York Times and all the big time newspapers. No, you didn't have the same type of technology and easy access to news that you do now, but I suspect Dr. Welsing would have known about Mr. Bolden. This book was published 2008. She might have even read this book. Darn. And so important, that whole time period, so important. Anyway, the number to dial, 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The number again, 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The email, untiljustice@gmail.com, untiljustice@gmail.com. I would strongly encourage everyone, again, in my opinion, and partly because that JFK assassination, and again, I was not old enough to be alive when all this happened. I saw all of this decades after everything transpired. That notwithstanding, it was really traumatizing. Seeing like his brains are out in the street, and oh my God, and then all this suspicion about what took place, and this happened in broad daylight. Oh, and in fact, I heard, like, recently, this is a case that I've studied, for years, not to the level of, the serious JFK researchers, but I've read books, about this, whole books and all the rest of it. Anyway, I have heard recently people say, they talk about dramatic changes and how much of an impact. I've heard people draw a direct line from the JFK assassination to COVID-19, ivermectin, you don't tell me what to do, and the government is lying, and all the rest of it. Direct line that so many people believed, and it turns out now, correctly so, that white government officials throughout the land at the most highest levels of power lied, just came out and lied about what should be, what's more important than the white president's life. His brains get blown out in broad daylight in the middle of the street, and we lie about that. That is how we end up with, I'm going to get me some ivermectin. You ain't going to tell me about no vaccine because they just came out and lied. Old Fauci lied. Direct line. JFK's brains in the street. Ivermectin. And, now I'm not old enough, so it would have to be older people to verify this. But people saying, I think you can, investigate yourself and think back yourself. People saying now, you could be disappeared now. You say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. Whoa, folks swoop in a van or Jeep or something and swoop you up, put a bag over your head, and whoop, be gone. Never see you again. People talking like that. In fact, I remember Ray Nagin. Remember, he was mayor of New Orleans during Katrina, privileged black male. He said, when he made those comments, we need some help. Get down here right now. God dog it. Get off your behinds. We're down here drowning. Get down here. When he said that on the radio, he said, man, I thought I could be disappeared. Like them folks would come by in a Jeep and boom. They said people used to not talk that way. Or I said better, people didn't start talking that way until after John Kennedy's brains got blown in the street. Now, I'm not old enough to verify to know if that's true or not. I do know they had a lot of lynchings of niggers before JFK, so at least for black people, we should have known, oh yeah, you upset white people, you could be disappeared. Emmett Till, lots of examples. Mac Charles Parker, lots of examples. Claude Neal, lots of examples. So we should have known that, but I guess really have it emphasized. Hey, you can be the most powerful white man in the world. You upset the wrong white people, we will blow your brains out in the street. We will splatter your brains across your white wife in broad daylight and lie about it for the next 60 years. Gangster. Number 605-313-5164. The code 564-943. Pound. But you should watch that report from this week. It was I didn't even play everything. That they said. It was so much that it was 2 hours of just wow. See, and you watch that, then go back one more time. Was Jonestown a CIA medical experience? It should sound way different now. And especially, I'm going to say it again, and it's in the book, that House Select Committee on Assassinations that they mentioned, all these CIA white officials lying about Oswald and all that, willfully lying, what they knew and all the rest of it, that got interrupted by Jonestown. Kennedy was assassinated November 22. Jonestown is November 18. Go back and read it again. Folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary to share, what we heard from Mr. Bolden, proceed.
Can I be heard?
Henry in Chicago. Dr. Welsing, Pamela Evans Harris. Yes, sir.
All right. Greetings, Gus. Greetings to all the callers and listeners. Before you started the recording, you were talking about the book Racial Matters. And I remember in the book, and I went back to go look for it, but I remember in the first week of this reading, Bolden was talking to Robert Kennedy about, black agents in the FBI. And I remember in Racial Matters, they were talking about how Robert Kennedy and J. Edgar Hoover were fighting over this thing about black agents because, Hoover was very much against hiring black agents in the FBI, and Kennedy wanted to, make good with the niggers. So he wanted to, hire more agents because him and Hoover had this fight about it, and obviously, this gave Hoover a thing about Robert Kennedy, just like in the book, the Kennedys were nigger lovers. So that's why Hoover and Robert Kennedy never got along. And this was, like I said, this was in Racial Matters. To the text, signing a paper that Bolden was signing this, I guess, this agreement that nobody forced him to take a polygraph test. I would caution non-white people to be wary of signing anything, or it will be, it's probably a trick of self-incrimination. Be very careful. Read the document before you sign it. I know they like to do that to young black males, taking plea deals for a couple of years, but then again, this conviction will be on your record, so you can't get a job, you can't get certain jobs, and you can't get welfare, whatever, so be careful signing any plea deals or anything that race soldiers try to give you. The polygraph, such a unreliable science. I think many courts still say it's inadmissible evidence. You can't even get it into evidence in most courts. And I'm imagining that the science of polygraph testing in the 60s was even more unreliable than it is now. So basically another trick to kind of trip up Bolden, asking him deceptive questions, asking broad questions and looking for simple yes, no answers, like, if he ever lied to state police. Did he ever ask them about if he was ever attacked by a state trooper, like he was in Connecticut? Stockton Martineau, his racist co-workers, basically setting them up. I know people would say he's getting very emotional and angry in this whole ordeal, but you got to understand they've kidnapped him and isolated him and starving him and lying to him and basically mentally torturing him. So I know it's easy for us to say, you can't get emotional, but God, when you're in those kind of conditions, it's kind of hard to contain your emotions. I mean, white people, they know how to torture us. So it's basically a science to them. George Howard, famous black male attorney here in the Chicagoland area, took on some cases, helped a couple of people who were falsely accused of rape and murder. I believe one of my older cousins know him personally, but he's a famous Chicago attorney here. So I think I might have remembered he handled Bolden's case, but I was kind of surprised to hear his name in the recording. The race soldiers who came into Bolden's house while his wife was there, basically stealing $400 from them. I did an inflation calendar. I did an inflation evaluation, and $400 today is $4,110. So just think, if you had $4,000 that's gone when race soldiers basically break into your house and look for evidence to try to frame you for something that you didn't do. That's all I have. I'll mute my line.
They were just checking the $4,000 to see if it was counterfeit. That's all. I'm sure as we keep reading, they'll get all that money back. Much obliged, Henry in Chicago. He said, and rightly so, we should be patient with Brother Bolden. You know, he was emotional, and, you know, this got a science, you know. We do CIA medical experiment. They got a science to this. We starve him, don't give him no water, and can't call nobody. Hot, can we open it? You got to keep it hot. Perspire. They got a science to making you camp out, get mad about things. Very important. But he said that they starved him. Is that 2 out of 3 weeks? Delectable Negro? We got his dad. Remember? They would steal the big piece of chicken, so his dad would just have to sit. Everybody else, all the children and wife, they would eat, and his dad would go in and just sit quietly and have an old air sandwich. And now, Mr. Bolden, white people got lots of ways of, you know, maybe you eat, maybe you don't. Well, I say you have your savory thoughts. Anyway, let's see. Shamika Harris with us as well. Proceed. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm actually kind of glad that Henry in Chicago said that, because this whole session, I was thinking, man, why is he doing this? Why is he taking the polygraph test? Why is he taking it again? He just kept doing things that I thought were not sensible, and he just got really emotional, and I thought they were pressing his metaphorical buttons the whole time. And I really shouldn't have been, maybe I shouldn't have been thinking about it like that, right? They were the ones most responsible for this entire thing, not him. And he's just surprised because, hey, he's been trying to do the correct thing his entire life, following the rules, and yeah, he just didn't see it coming. At the beginning of the polygraph test, he said, he goes, now Jordan began, you trust me, don't you, Abe? And he's like, no. How could I possibly trust you after everything that's happened today? You know, and he goes through everything. And then the white man goes, I'm just doing my job. I know that we used a trick to get you here. Man, white people don't like to say they lie. They have so many different ways to say they're lying without saying they're lying. He asked several times about having John Reed and Associates give the exam. That kept being ignored. He did sign that form saying he wasn't being forced to do it. Like, he said he didn't want to take the polygraph test, and then they just kept pressing him, and he ended up taking like 2 or 3 polygraph tests. What's the definition of force? Isn't that to make somebody do something that they don't want to do? I don't know. It seems like he was forced to do that. He would make one statement, you know. He's like, hey, why don't we have John Reed and Associates give the exam? He's like, are you saying I don't know what I'm doing? He's like, no, I'm not saying that at all. It's just like, that's the way white people do. You'll say one thing, and I'll say, hey, are you saying this? And that's, man, that part right there, you know, I'm glad he said that, but then he did a lot of talking afterwards. Every time he wanted to do something, you know, whether it was call his wife, get a drink of water, or use a restroom, open the window, just we don't have time for that, you know. And I mean, when he went to take the polygraph test, he's like, let's open the window. We're just going to be in here for a little bit. It was daytime when they went in there to take the polygraph test, and I think they got out of there till like midnight. So that's just ridiculous. Let's see. the "Do you trust me?" question. He asked him that like 2 or 3 times. The first time he says no, then he says yes, and I was thinking to myself, that first answer, no, it made sense, right? But then when he says yes, I'm like if you think about it logically, one of those statements isn't true. But I was wondering if it's because, if it's the way that non-white people have this sort of ambivalence when it comes to white people. It's like, they shouldn't be trusted, but it's like you feel almost unreasonable when you don't. It's really an insane situation. So, maybe he's in, this state where, yeah, I trust you and I don't. I don't know, but that doesn't make sense to just give both of those answers. One of those has to be untrue. Let me see. I'm just remembering one of the white men said it's not personal. And I thought to myself, yeah, it is not personal. It's business. Mr. Bolden told them, you're making a mistake. Again, I don't think that's true. I think those white people are doing exactly what it is they want to do. It was not a mistake. They had it all planned out, it was super strategic. I mean, incorrect, but wasn't a mistake. Man, I'm not sure how many polygraph tests he took. Was it 4? Because he just keeps saying, he asked me if I would take another test. He asked me if I would take another test. When he gets held in a cell and he says his name is Al Baker and he's in there with the white, he didn't call him a white man, but he said he had stringy hair and he called him a Southerner. And when he leaves, he's like, see you, Baker. And, he's like, my name isn't Smith either. I thought they put that white man in there to see if he would say something incriminating, like they might have put him in there to be some sort of informant. There was a couple of white men who he acted like they were the good white men, the one who started crying. He said, he had tears in his eyes and he started crying. I thought that was supposed to be a good white man. Maybe the commissioner, when they tried to give him the $25,000 bill, and he said, no, it's going to be $2,500. The one who picked him up in the car, I was like, what? Why are they doing this? The question, where Spagnoli asked him, FBI men ain't like these other cops out here. They don't take bribes like these other cops, do they? And he answers, he says there are thousands and thousands of FBI agents, and there might be a few that weren't quite right. The lawyer didn't like that he said that first. He asked about the FBI. The Secret Service is not a part of the FBI. That's 2 different things. And anyway, he was probably telling the truth. Many people think law enforcement officers aren't quite right, in quotes. So that was probably an honest answer. When the Secret Service agent stole the $400, and he said maybe they took it to see if the bills were counterfeit. That right there did seem extremely naive. And also, I was kind of wondering, it said they came and searched the house on Monday night. I don't remember what day it was that he was taking a lie detector test and stuff. So I was wondering if they searched the house after they got the warrant, or if they asked him if they could search the house, and he was like, yeah, you could search the house if that would help, and they went and searched the house then. I wasn't sure about that. I might have gotten a little confused, and that's all I have. Oh, wait. I do have one more thing. Last week, I accidentally called Mr. Bolden, Mr. Morgan. My mistake. Sorry about that.
We love Morgan. Right on. Much obliged, Shamika Harris. That is important. Now, they did have the warrant, so they could have done the search. I don't know the timing, but I think he did offer, hey, I'll go and do the search with you if it'll help. And I said, and now, this is why produce the one. I mean, there's so many reasons, but that's just one of many, many reasons why never. I don't care. We know you took the weed whacker. Just say you did the weed whacker. Fess up and say you took the weed whacker. Let us search your vehicle. I do not consent to searches of my person, property, phone, vehicle, residence without a warrant. Been saying that one for years. Norm Nigger Knocker Stamper, former chief of the Seattle Police Department, he didn't just tell us about it. He wrote a book and put it in his book in all capital letters, bold face print. And then he came on the program and told us why. I said, you one step away from the nigger knocker going in and they will say that exact. Oh, sure. I ain't done nothing. Go on and look in. I'll help you look. Go on. Here, let me get the jack out of the way. Go on and search through the trunk. Go ahead. That might be the least of your problem. Wait a minute. My $4,000. Wait a minute. What? Wait a minute. Least of your worries. The polygraph, I do want to make sure I get in. Employers generally may not require or request any employee or job applicant to take a lie detector test or discharge, discipline, or discriminate against an employee or job applicant for refusing to take a test or for exercising other rights under the Act. This is the Employee Polygraph Protection Act. Now, I guess there, got to be some caveats, of course, that they do say for investigations about security breaches or economic loss. So I suspect if somebody's wallet goes missing, might be different in this circumstance. They say if I was stolen, they might say that this is, a security issue. So there you go. Let's see. Get him one. Oh, man. See, other folks who dialed in with a hand up. Glad I looked at the line. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up. Proceed.
Hey. Yeah, go.
I think.
Hello?
We'll get the female first. Confidant. Proceed.
Okay. Good evening, Gus, and all of the listeners and callers. I came to the book a little bit late, but I started listening today and have some comments. So on page 79, where he's being interrogated by way of polygraph, and he's trying to handle a range of emotions, and then we wonder why Black people, males, females, have high levels of stress, high blood pressure, all kind of chronic illnesses. Because can you imagine being in a room with your likely enemy, and they're harassing you and torturing you into saying things that are not true? You're swinging from anger to fear to second guessing yourself. You're confused. You don't know what's going on. And then they wonder why these kind of things cause us to have chronic illnesses. This kind of harassment and pressure. That's the first thing that I noticed, the stress levels that we have to endure through this system. Then on page 80, I seem to recall that just from time to time hearing about when we make an achievement or have an achievement such as buying a house or a home, something of that nature, white people tend to get very jealous and hostile. And I did note that on page 80, so they went in and ransacked it, tore things up, probably a lot of hostility and anger while they were doing it, stole money, crooks, thieves that they are. And so I noted that. I thought that was interesting. Then on page 84, let's see here, 84. So I'm not sure what I was looking at here. I'm going to let that go for now. I'm not sure why I noted that page. I think in chapter 8, though, I noticed some of the dialogue between the cops when there's more than, the CIA, the agents, when they were more than one agent in the room with him, they tend to play the good cop, bad cop type of roles to try to confuse and make you wonder who you should trust, and the self-doubt that brings to you emotionally. You don't know what to believe. It's quite confusing. So that was the sense I got of what was going on page 94. And then on page 95, the blaring headlines, when a black male or female also, but in particular, black male does something, it makes major headlines where, as opposed to when some criminal, corrupt white male may do the same thing, you may not hear about it for weeks, if at all, or maybe years later. But I think the time frame between when this supposedly was an accusation and when it went to print was quite short indeed, without any clarity as to whether he was charged or actually guilty. On page, I think 96, I don't know what I meant there, but I'm going to let that one go as well. And there was something on page 99. I'll have to go back and review that as well to see why I flagged that page as well. So for now, those are all of my comments.
Much obliged, the confidant stress. And we just talked about that yesterday, in fact, where I think they had a whole lot of reasons to go after Mr. Bolden, but they did include, oh, you just got a house, didn't you, uppity nigger? Trying to start a business, uppity nigger? That is this is, he's talking about things from 1964, right? So this is over 60 years. We just talked about this yesterday. We just talked about this. Man, you don't want to be showing out about nothing. Vindictive about the smallest of things. He could have got like a little hovel, nothing, one bedroom, barely get your car, parked next to the curb. What? You own that little rat-infested hovel? Oh my, this uppity nigger. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, if we missed you totally.
Greetings, everyone.
Retired firefighter.
Yes, sir. The first thing I have here is on taking a lie detector test without legal advice. Didn't he have a right to an attorney? Maybe the law, the Miranda rights law, hadn't been passed by then. I don't know, but taking a lie detector test should be a no-no. To be involved in questioning with sharp, deceitful white people is very, very dangerous. I have down here all of the uncomfortable atmosphere that he was placed in. I think it was on purpose. I think that's a purposeful technique that takes place with law enforcement, and it still carries on today. Sometime during the first reading, the term techniques of interrogation came up. The first thing that comes to my mind is deceit. This makes being the first black, quote unquote, a very dangerous experience so far in the reading. That's what comes to my mind. The term team player was popular and during my employment time, and I was identified as not being a team player many times. So I think I know on what Mr. Bolden was going through. All of this was pre-planned to put him in greater confinement. My thoughts through the first reading is, as far as what he went through, is very embarrassing. I have here as notes. Big mistake by Mr. Bolden, I think, by talking too much while watching a criminal, Spagnoli. He shouldn't have had anything to say when the guy was talking to him and asking him questions. I think Mr. Bolden's lawyer had it right. You've been set up. And last but not least, while searching the house, like everybody else has heard about, the Secret Service stole money. And I put down a question. I think you already answered. Did they have a warrant when they raided his house? That's it.
Oh, much obliged, retired firefighter. They did have a warrant. They said they had a warrant for his arrest. Eventually, at the end of the day, after all these polygraph administrations, it was just we were talking about Shamika Harris and we were saying, because he had said earlier in the book that they had said, we want to do a search, and he was very accommodating, like, sure, I'll help you do it, no problem, no warrant needed. And so we were just questioning if they conducted the search before they had issued the warrant or after. That's all. But they did have the warrant. I just, we don't know when the exact time of when the search was done. Much obliged, retired firefighter in Florida. I do think it's important for people to keep in mind in terms of the timing of things that were happening when Mr. Bolden was arrested. This is May of 1964. The James Chaney and those two white boys are about to be killed in about 2 months. But the Warren Commission that is investigating the assassination of John Kennedy, that is ongoing. Mr. Bolden had said he wanted to go and testify and share his information with them. So that's ongoing while he gets arrested. Very important to keep that in mind as, we proceed. Folks that we've missed in total, have commentary?
Yeah, Gus, victim from New Jersey. I was thinking about the female caller when she was saying, there's a lot of things that he was doing that he didn't understand. But I'm thinking that the over complying, I think that's akin to validation, white acceptance. You know what I mean? The pious, I'll say like the pious Negro complex, where black people have to be like exceptional, overly good, overly kind, overly honest. And at the time, Agent Bolden, he knew he was innocent. So, it was, he really didn't have anything too hot. And unfortunately, I can't really get into his mind, but it seems like, he believed that the law would prevail. I'm saying, I'm innocent. I have nothing to hide here. I too think that inmate that was put in the cell with him was a plant. So that was a good thing that he gave a fake name. Give as little information as you can, because people have been convicted by testimonies of cellmates and other people that they were confined with. So that was good. I also thought about how you always get pushback when you give your definition of racism and you use the word, when you say dedicated, and a lot of white people, they disagree with that. They just want to believe that, it's not conscious. It's, what the actions of white supremacist races is not conscious. It's kind of like just something that, that just happens, but clearly these agents, they were dedicated to lying on Agent Bolden. So it's clear dedication. So this isn't by accident. This isn't, what was the metaphor they use? Keystone cops or police officers and some some small town that's fumbling over themselves. Like, no, this is the Secret Service. That's on detailed and assigned to protecting the President of the United States. So they were definitely dedicated. And there was a lot going on. I opened up Kenneth O'Reilly book, like right now I reopened that. But going through this book I bought another book, and it's kind of making me want to put it down because it's the book is called JFK and RFK Secret Battle Against Zionist Extremists by Ken McCarthy. So there was a lot going on, and just like what's going on in the Middle East today, there was a lot going on in the Middle East back then. And I didn't open the book up yet, but I heard the author speak, and he was saying how JFK was trying to get, I forget the name of AIPAC, but they went by another name during that time, but to have them register as foreign agents, where, because they're over here lobbying for the state of Israel. So that's a real interesting something to investigate. Maybe the role that many entities, whether it was AIPAC and its predecessor, I don't know the name, the CIA. There was a lot going on during this time. So yeah. So I'll close.
Absolutely. There's, reading more important than watching television. Absolutely. And there's so many books and what have you. This is such a pivotal moment in world history, global system of white supremacy, racism. And for sure, the white people are not ignorant. In fact, that was on display at the hearing. All of the people who gave testimony about all this CIA lie, all the CIA criminal deception, obstruction of justice, and involvement directly or indirectly in this assassination were all, I think, would be people classified as white. They are not ignorant. Please. Now, I said just checking the newspaper. Sometimes that reading, you don't necessarily have to get the whole book. You can get newspapers shorter, doesn't take as much time, so much information. So I'm looking at the New York Times just from late April 1964, okay? So this is basically 5 months after Kennedy's assassination. The Warren Commission has started. Alan Dulles is on the Warren Commission, who Kennedy had fired from the CIA, and he gets put on the Warren Commission and to lie and vet and deceive, obstruct justice. So this is what's in the newspaper, and I'll just give it to you in order. So this is April 26, 1964. Ruby depends. It's Jack Ruby accused, or it's on video, killing Lee Harvey Oswald on Sunday, November 24th, 1963. Jack Ruby pens note for his defense, tells of events leading to slaying of Oswald. This is May 5th, Washington proceedings about the Warren Commission. May 7th, NBC preparing white paper on Oswald assassination role. Now this, I want you to think 2 times. At the end of today's report, they said that NBC has possession of a video that they refuse to release that purportedly shows someone who appears to look similar to Lee Harvey Oswald, who is watching the motorcade with JFK. Now, if that is true, one more time what they said in the inquiry task force this week, there is no evidence Lee Harvey Oswald shot anyone. At minimum, why won't they release the footage? And they did a number of white papers, and that's what they were called at this time, and they is NBC, and they all said the same thing. Lee Harvey Oswald, we know he did it. Now again, in 2025, there's no evidence to support that, but we know Lee Harvey Oswald did it. He did it by himself, and anybody who thinks different is a kook, nut, commie, whatever, name called, libtard, name called, name called, name called, name called. And they did lots of these white papers. May 10, Warren panel told of Dallas rifleman. What? May 13, Warren panel to hear Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover. FBI building is named after him. No friend of the Negro. Abraham Bolden included. May 15th, Hoover and McConey warn witnesses. Again, Hoover, no friend of the Negro or JFK. I think one of the listeners had mentioned that already. May 21st, accused agent sees laxity on Kennedy. That would be Abraham Bolden. Now watch this. I just said that's May 21. May 22. Agent indicted in plot to sell Secret Service documents. That is 24 hours. Bang. And then the Warren Commission just rolls on. 24 Texans call assassination photo his. The 25th FBI men reenact Kennedy's shooting. When you get all this magic bullet and craziness. 28th Commission traces fatal Dallas shots. And last one, May 30th, killer's first shot reportedly struck Kennedy and Texan. Now that's massive. That is massive. When they start talking about the same bullet hitting all these people and what have you, that is mandatory if you had one shooter in Oswald. If it is not one bullet did all of this, if there are multiple shots that did all this damage, then everything that we have been told is a lie, which is kind of what they said on April Fool's Day. It's been lots and lots of deliberate lying by very powerful white people for over a half century. This is another one important aspect of white supremacy racism, master deceivers. One of the ways that, really it seems the only way to be a master deceiver, the lie would fall apart immediately when you die unless other white people, it's not the same Voltron effect, other white people, we got your back even in death, white brother. We will pick that baton up and we will carry that lie on for you. That is integral, because that's how these lies stick, are believed, propagate for years and decades. It goes beyond, the life cycle of that white person. Like, dang, other white people, they do this in life and in death. White people support the lies of other race soldiers. That's what makes them master deceivers. That's part of it. It's a lot to it, but I mean, any hoodles. We will get to lots to, panel reject theories of plot. Look at it, look at it. June 1, panel reject theories of plot in Kennedy death. Warren inquiry is expected to dispel doubts in Europe that Oswald acted alone. Warren panel to reject theories of conspiracy behind Kennedy's assassination. Alan Dulles would say, absolutely, we got to reject all of that and be talking about how we were involved in this and what we did and didn't do. Lie and lie. Most of Mr. Fuller say, number one method of practicing racism, deception. Master deceivers. They look at that. Other white people around the world look at us like, man, this ain't even what? Nothing to see here. Just one lone nutty white dude. Shut all that up. Say it last time before we get to the audio segment. In 2025, there is no evidence Lee Harvey Oswald shot anybody. That would include Officer Tippit. Tangent, but anybody, much less all of the shots at, like, come on. The CIA didn't even believe that. And they put it in writing. That is astounding to me that got entered into the record. They put it in writing. The CIA, that they thought that was bunkum. Exactly the report that I just read. The Warren Commission is saying, hey, ain't no conspiracy. Lee Harvey Oswald did it all. The CIA put it in writing that is nonsense and didn't even shred it. Phew, master deceivers. And when they said in that segment, LBJ, former President Lyndon Johnson, former President Nixon, former President Truman, that they all believed that there was some sort of CIA involvement, massive conspiracy lie about the assassination of John Kennedy. These are all former presidents, enormously powerful white people. Why are you not snitching? Why is this some nonsense that you just, I shouldn't even say no. Why is this something that you just secret? I'm going to keep whisper about this, and they can tell them after years after I'm gone. Maybe you tell one or two people. Why is that? I mean, this could have been you. Kennedy was your homie, LBJ. I mean, you were his vice president. Like, dang. You just go along, and that is white people. I'm going to go along and aid and abet another lie. Why? That's another one where you say, the masters of the no snitch policy. You got the most powerful white people in the world. They adhere to the no snitch policy. Even about my homie, I love me some John Kennedy. Well, at least one or two of them should. Even then, no snitching. Direct line to ivermectin. We will get to audio segment number 2. The echo. That's part of the echo. Ivermectin. Ain't no Rona. Government distrust. Well earned, I might say. Well earned distrust of white people. That is the government system of white supremacy. The echo from Dealey Plaza. Audio segment number 2. Katherine, Massey, Book Club.
Chapter 9. I slept little that night, so I wasn't at my best when the doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Peeking out one of the front windows, I could see 2 men standing at the door. One was neatly dressed in a tailored brown suit and held a copy of the Chicago Sun-Times in his hand. The other, wearing overalls and a t-shirt, carried a huge video camera on his shoulder. I thought I could make out a third person sitting in a Channel 7 news van parked on the street. I opened the front door but kept the aluminum screen door closed between us. "Mr. Bolden," the well-dressed man greeted me. The reporter's name was John Drury. "We are from Channel 7 News, and we want to talk to you about the story that's running in the newspapers today." "I don't have anything to say to the press right now. I may have a comment later when I find out more about the charges against me." "We are here to help you get your side of the story out," he continued. "Something is fishy about what has happened to you. We have talked to some other agents about you, and some of them feel that you are getting the shaft." "What agents?" I asked. "We can't name names, but when this story broke, we talked to some of our contacts. We know that you were very critical of the Secret Service over the Kennedy assassination and that you think that the Secret Service could have done more to protect Kennedy. We hear that from more than one source. Who told you that? I asked again, this time more sharply. Why don't you let us in for a moment, or come on the porch where we can take a few pictures of you? I'll ask a few questions. If I ask something that you don't want to answer, I can't let you in because my wife and children are asleep, and I wouldn't want to appear on television looking like this anyway, I said, cutting him off. I would like for you to tell me who brought up the Kennedy thing. Yeah, I talked to some agents about testifying before the Warren Commission. I want to know how you found out. I can't tell you that, Abraham. All I can say is that it came from an agent that thinks a whole lot of you and thinks that you are getting a raw deal. But you have to get your own story out. The way it stands now, it looks bad for you. The public is seeing only one side of the issue. Why don't you take my telephone number and call me later today? I may talk with you after seeing my attorney. I wrote down the number and handed it to him. Thanks, the reporter said. Now, don't talk to any of those other news guys who will be coming around. We were here first, okay? Okay. About 5 minutes after that crew drove off, the doorbell rang again. This time I saw 4 men on the porch, 2 carrying video cameras. There were vans from 2 other Chicago television stations parked out front, and a man across the street pointing a video camera at the house. Again, the reporters told me they were here to get my side of the story. I referred them to George Howard and mentioned that I might have something to say at a later time. Barbara met me in the hall as I walked back to the kitchen. Sure are a lot of people coming by here, she said. They want to interview me. I think you should let George do the talking. Hell, the Secret Service has blasted my name and address all over the newspapers and TV before they even got my side of anything. I don't believe Jones said anything to them. I think that the whole thing was set up to drum me out of the service. Just talking about it to my wife made the anger rise inside me. One reporter said that the Kennedy assassination might be the cause of my problems. He might be right for all I know. You need to settle down, Abraham, Barbara soothed. Maybe you should get out of the house and go over to Cecilia's. That way they won't know where to find you. Nah, I'm not going to run and hide. I'm going to fight back. I'm not going to lie down and let them walk all over me, I fumed. I'm going to call a news conference here at the house later today and give my side of the story. I'm not going to let them kick me in the balls. I stormed into the kitchen and spread the reporter's business cards on top of the laundry hamper near the phone. I dialed each television station and left a message that I would be holding a news conference at my home at 2 p.m. I added that no photographic or video equipment would be allowed inside the house. Just before their expected arrival, I set up my own tape recorder under a table in the living room. As the reporters showed up, I ushered them all to the large circular couch, then sat myself down in a folding chair in front of them. I began the conference by flatly denying that I had attempted to sell a government file to Spagnoli, as alleged by Frank Jones. Prodded by their questions, I gave them a rundown of my experience as a Pinkerton detective and as an Illinois state police officer. Do you think that race is a factor in this case? One reporter asked. Yes, I answered without hesitating. I told them about the problems I had had on the White House detail, both in Washington and in Hyannisport. It was an acting supervisor who told me that I was a nigger, was born a nigger, would die a nigger, and should act like one, I added emotionally. A reporter asked, Mr. Bolden, as I said earlier today when I talked to you on the porch, there is some talk about your being dissatisfied with how the Secret Service protected President Kennedy. Is that true? Do you think your attitude on the Kennedy matter has anything to do with your predicament? I don't know who set me up or why. All I know is that my supervisors sent me to see Jones, and now they are denying it. No, the Secret Service didn't respond properly when Kennedy was killed. I said it the day he was assassinated and have said it almost every day since. I grew increasingly emotional as I spoke. This is nothing but a frame job. The agents around Kennedy didn't do their jobs because some of them were out nightclubbing and getting drunk the day before the assassination. Some of the agents who were in Dallas on the detail were nearly drunk while they guarded the president in Hyannisport. They were hauling women around in Secret Service cars and drinking while on duty. I was sweating heavily and breathing hard, having worked myself into a fit of anger. The idea that I could settle some scores at the service now consumed me. I often said to other agents and to personal friends that someone needed to tell the truth about the lax protection the president received. I witnessed how the agency was covering up important investigations leading up to the day he was killed. I heard the rumors of the Secret Service identification that was lost or stolen in a Dallas strip club the night before the assassination. I heard that lie circulated by the Secret Service that Kennedy was partially responsible for his own death because he ordered the agents not ride on the running boards of his limousine. Prior to the assassination, I read no memorandum, received any official or unofficial directive, or heard any rumor advising agents not to ride on the running boards of the limousine. The words were rushing breathlessly out of me now. You won't find many agents in the Secret Service who believe that Oswald was not part of a conspiracy. You won't find many who believe that the agents in Dallas did their jobs, either. Even now, the agents in charge are running around trying to cover up for the agents who went out partying the night before Kennedy was killed. The irresponsible conduct of the agents in Dallas was the rule, not the exception, and there were several agents previously assigned to the detail who were concerned that Kennedy's life was jeopardized by the outlandish behavior and arrogant overconfidence of some of the agents on the White House detail. I was there when all of the Secret Service's identification books were secretly replaced by the Bureau of Printing and Engraving. In my own opinion, the replacement gives credibility to the whispered rumor that an agent had lost his identification or had it stolen from him. By bringing this case against me, the Secret Service had unwittingly given me a national platform from which I could speak out about these issues. I wondered if they had considered the possibility that the press would be all over me. I thought that since I would be dead by the time I was 30 anyway, I had nothing to lose. I owed it to President Kennedy. None of the reporters interrupted my tirade. When I was finished, I walked to the kitchen to get some water, then came back into the living room and announced, "The news conference is over." The newsman asked if I would be willing to go with them somewhere outside so they could get video of me saying some of the things I had just told them, and we made arrangements to meet near the expressway, not far from my house. They set up their cameras and interviewed me, and I repeated much of what I had said at my house. There weren't many questions about Spagnoli or Jones. The reporters seemed far more interested in my allegations regarding the conduct of the Secret Service, its shoddy protection of the president, and the drinking and carousing that had been publicly denied by service supervisors. Even though the reporters pressed me, I refused to speculate about who might be trying to frame me. I drove home, confident that now the public would hear my side of the story. As I passed the intersection of 79th and Emerald, I noticed the real estate office on the corner and realized that I had gone to that office with Agent Cross on the evening of May 11th, a few hours after I had met with Frank Jones. Cross had explained to me that he wasn't satisfied with life as a Secret Service agent and wanted to open his own business, a nightclub, as soon as he could get the money together. He had a list of potentially available locations from this office and had a private conversation with the owner while I waited near the entrance in the Secret Service car. As we left, he told me that he would soon be able to open his own business. I don't know what he meant and don't want to speculate. Later that evening, Barbara and I sat down to watch the 6 o'clock news. The Channel 7 team had told me that they thought they could get the story put together in time for the early news, and sure enough, it was the lead story. The Secret Service agent arrested on May 18th tells his side of the story, the anchorman announced. Abraham Bolden was interviewed today and says that the case against him is a frame job. He accused the Secret Service of drinking while on duty and being lax in the protection of President Kennedy. Bolden stated that his efforts to tell the Warren Commission about the conduct of fellow Secret Service agents may be the reason that he was called out of Washington, D.C., and placed under arrest. There I was on the screen in my cheap brown suit from Sears and Roebuck and my dark green Ray-Ban glasses, declaring open war on the United States Secret Service. It felt so much like a dream that I had to remind myself that it was really happening. The newsman's voice was still echoing in the living room when the phone rang. "Abraham, this is George Howard." There was no mistaking the irritation in his voice. "Hello," I said calmly. "Man, what the hell is going on?" Howard began. "I told you not to discuss this case with anyone. Now I just heard that you were on television discussing the case. If I'm going to defend you, we have to work together. I can't have you going in one direction and me going in another. Do you understand that?" Howard was insistent and wanted it clear that he was taking charge of the situation. "Now, you have to understand that we have to defend against the charges against you no matter who you think is behind them or why. Don't say one word to anyone else. I mean it." "Okay, George," I said apologetically. "I just wanted to get my side of the story out. That's all I was doing." "Well, you may have done more harm than good. Don't talk to the press anymore unless I am with you. The hearing is tomorrow, and I will see you there. Keep quiet. Stay at home and get some rest. You're under a lot of stress, and I can understand that, but don't say anything else to the press." As soon as I hung up the phone, it rang again. This time I heard the soft, clear voice of my father, calling from East St. Louis. "Abraham, are you all right? I just saw you on television down here about an hour ago on national news. Is everything all right up there?" "Not really, Dad. 2 men that I arrested are accusing me of trying to sell a government file to one of them." I tried to sound confident when I added, "There's nothing to the charges." "Well, I think that you should quiet down and not talk so much. You must have done something to step on somebody's toes. You be careful now, and don't talk so much." Dad ended his fatherly tone. He hung up quietly, without waiting for an answer. I left Barbara in the living room, scanning the channels on the television, looking for more coverage of our story. I was physically and emotionally spent, and took myself off to bed, desperate for the escape of a deep sleep. George Howard showed up at our house the next morning, May 21st, to take us to the hearing in Commissioner C.S. Bentley's court. "Man, that was some stunt you pulled yesterday," he greeted me. "Did you see the papers this morning?" He opened his briefcase and took out the Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune. "You made the headlines in both of these," he said, handing the papers to me. It seemed my statements had created a firestorm in the press. The Warren Commission was questioned about the findings concerning the performance of the Secret Service in Dallas on the day of Kennedy's assassination. Shaylee Rankin, counsel to the commission, stated to the press that the performance of the service would be re-evaluated in light of my accusations. Newsweek magazine was preparing a full-page story outlining all of my allegations about the service's behavior. They had taken photos of Barbara and me as we left the commissioner's office. The Secret Service was suddenly on the defensive. As George and I went through the articles, the phone rang. Barbara answered the phone and handed it to George. I watched his face as he listened to his secretary on the other end. When he was done, my attorney looked at me and said that the hearing was canceled. The government had simply gone ahead and indicted me, rather than risk having the case thrown out in a preliminary hearing. "There's nothing we can do now except prepare for trial," he said. As he went on to explain that the arraignment had been set for a week later, the doorbell rang. I peeked out the window and recognized the neatly dressed, portly man standing at the door as Richard Walters, an occasional informant of mine. Walters was a card shark and a petty criminal who could neither read nor write. He had been an informant, although one of limited value for the Secret Service since before I became an agent. In 1963, I'd sent Walters to Jones's home in an attempt to determine if Jones was still circulating counterfeit money. The investigation was discontinued when Jones became suspicious of Walters and reported to me that he had been approached by an old man looking for counterfeit money. George asked who was at the door, and I told him. "Well, get rid of him," he said impatiently. "We have other matters to discuss." I went out on the porch, where Walters was fidgeting nervously. Looking past him, I could see a young man sitting in a parked car and moving his head up and down periodically as if he was manipulating something in his lap. "Who's that guy in the car?" I asked, nodding in the direction of the street. "Oh, that's Lewis," Walters answered. "He's all right. He's my nephew, and he brought me over here." Walters was obviously anxious. His lips quivered as he spoke, and he couldn't stop playing with his necktie. "I came to pick up a piece," he said. "I need a piece to take care of Jones." "What kind of piece are you talking about?" I asked. "You know what I'm talking about. Jones needs to be taken care of for what he is doing to you. Give me a gun and I'll take care of him right now." Walters looked down at his feet as he shifted his weight from side to side. "You stay away from Jones," I said firmly. "You stay far away from Jones." "I'm just trying to help you, Abe," Walters pleaded, a little pathetically. It seemed to me he was almost about to cry. George Howard was waiting inside the house. "What did he want?" "He wanted me to give him a piece." "A what?" Howard was clearly startled. "A piece. A gun?" "Yes, that's my understanding of what he was talking about. He said that he wanted to take care of Jones. I think he was wearing a wire transmitter. I think that the Secret Service or FBI sent him here to entrap me into some conspiracy to kill Jones. His behavior was very suspicious, and he was acting real nervous." "They're really out to put you away, Abe," George said, shaking his head. "You have got to be very careful. The minute you do something like that, you're going away for a very long time, and you know it. I wouldn't give anyone a gun, George. I'm not that stupid. I told him to stay away from Jones." "Okay. Don't let me down now." George stood up and gathered his things to leave. "This is a tough case, and I don't want you to complicate it any more than you already have. We'll be in Judge Perry's court on the 28th. In the meantime, I have to get busy drawing up the preliminary motions. I'll call you the day after the holiday if there are any changes." George Howard walked out of the house, leaving Barbara and me to spend a tense, edgy Memorial Day weekend with our family, trying hard not to think too much about the hard road in front of us.
Man. Katherine, Massey, Book Club, Context of White Supremacy. What to say? What a nugget we missed out on. Now, maybe we would have got nothing. Maybe we would have got nothing. But, oh, man. Our buddy and counter-racist pal, the grandcestor, Neely Fuller Jr. I'd said this before. He, Mr. Bolden, hey, we're co-workers. We work in the same department. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Printing and engraving, excuse me. I mixed them. Man, transposed them. Man. I don't think, Mr. Fuller ran the Bureau, but he was there at this time, 1963 and 1964, by his own testimony. So, wow. Did you hear about Secret Service IDs getting printed there? I know I've heard him talk about the money being printed there, but did you see the Secret Service badges being printed there? Matter of fact, my question would have been, do you think a very powerful white person, not no Negro like yourself, or me, but do you think a very powerful white person, they could have had access to print out, I don't know, 6, 7, we'll call them extra Secret Service badges. How difficult would it be for a very powerful white person, if you work at the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, how difficult would it be for them? At minimum, you would know what those badges look like, right? You could get an old one, right? Come on. Come on. My bad. I really wish I had known this and had read this part, because I would, man, I would have had lots to ask just about that right there. Did you see the badges getting, like, what? What is going on? What did your badge look like? Fuller, you still got your badge? What did that look like? Man, I say that all the time, though. If you have older relatives, uncles, aunts, grandparents, neighbors, just people that you kick it with, ask them about events that they lived. Jonestown, Orenthal James trial, a Kennedy assassination, whatever. Ask them and see, what did Katrina, see what they remember, what did they see on TV, or what did they talk about, what did they read, all of as many questions as possible, take advantage. And man, anywho, number 605-313-5164, the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Let's see, email number 1. Greetings, Gus, listeners, callers. My lived memory always seems to connect the assassination of JFK, MLK, and RFK because they came in such relatively short succession, particularly the last two, the continual TV coverage, the funeral, viewing of the casket, the widow and her children at the service, processional march, then endless confusion about what really happened. I think JFK's assassination was particularly traumatic for me because I was at my paternal grandfather's funeral when it happened. I was in a house full of grieving relatives, including my own father, all the while watching the seemingly surreal events play out on television. Wow, and then many black people were very connected to Kennedy, so you had lots of black people who were grieving about Kennedy. That's what Minister Malcolm, out of here. Enjoying this text. Thanks for the 2 documentary recommendations. The clearest explanation of what may have happened that I have seen. That was the intros for last week. JFK, Destiny Betrayed, and then JFK Revisited. Oliver Stone, who we heard from April Fool's Day this week. Basically being able to say, told you I was right. Chapter 7, I'm not calling you anything. I just feel that we need to have someone impartial like John Reed over at Michigan Avenue, or anyone not associated with Secret Service. Why does he keep talking about trust? Of course he does not trust him. Who in their right mind would trust him? I guess it's just part of the manipulation. 2, onion skin copy. This brings back lots of memories. Fascinating how far technology has come, indeed. Chapter 8. George Howard, the attorney who has been my fraternity brother at Lincoln University. I explained quickly that the Secret Service was charging me with trying to sell a government file. Mr. Bolden is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I think I first learned of Mr. Bolden in one of their publications. It has a long list of famous black members, including Martin Luther King. I think it was constructive in the beginning, founded in 1906. Unfortunately, like so many organizations over time, becoming less constructive, hazing, corruption, etc., due primarily to the global system of racism, white supremacy. Usual suspects. 2, Stocks merely smiled again and walked toward the door. He turned toward me, made a cartoonish face, and said with a snicker, "Y'all's the one that's in trouble." Racist jokes are so important in the system of white supremacy. Heard my first one around age 10 when I started at the white school. The so-called black dialect is a consistent part of these jokes. I suspect it harkens back to the minstrel shows of more than a century ago. So much of racism, white supremacy is passed from generation to generation. I'm gonna hold you lie down, granddad. I got your back. 3, when the sergeant was done with the photographs, Russell walked up sobbing openly without embarrassment and put a comforting hand on my shoulder. Everything will be all right. Was it ever stated what their racial classification was? Were they two good white brothers? It seems so. 4. I had been taught to play by the rules. The rules are made by the people who are the most powerful in the known universe: racist man, racist woman, racist child. 5. My wife rushed up to me and with her lips very close to my ear said softly, "Everything is going to be all right." It takes a lot of effort to maintain an attempted marriage and care unit in the global system of racism, white supremacy. Having a supportive care mate can be an advantage. They stayed together for all those years. So impressive. 6. Chicago Sun-Times arrested for attempting to sell a government file to Joseph Spagnoli, counterfeiting of U.S. savings bonds. White supremacists can charge us with any crime, no matter the evidence, and get a conviction. Lie on the witness stand, plant evidence, jinky police lineups, racist judges, juries, and police. You are guilty just by virtue of your skin color, for sure. 7. Howard had worked hard to get where he was, driving Chicago Transit Authority while he attended John Marshall High School. Went too far. Where he finished near the top of his class. His record in state court was very good, but the fact was he had very little experience handling criminal cases in federal court. With my limited resources, he was the best attorney I could afford, but I knew he would do everything he could for me. With all their education and skill, they are still at the mercy of racist man, racist woman, and racist child. This is why we need to replace the global system of racism, white supremacy, with a system of justice. Chapter 9. Chicago Sun-Times. The reporter's name was John Drury. We are from Channel 7 News. Feel that you're getting the shaft. Like John Shaft, written by Ernest Tidyman, a white man. I don't remember seeing anything on the national news regarding Mr. Bolden, but I was quite young at the time. VGQ talking to the press does not seem like a good idea in this instance. I understand his anger, though. They have lots of newspaper at this time period articles about Mr. Bolden, so it might be if you can maybe get access to like WGN or Chicago Network TV, might be there. 2. I heard that lie circulated by the Secret Service that Kennedy was partially responsible for his own death because he ordered the agents not ride on the running boards of his limousine prior to the assassination. I read no memorandum, received any official or unofficial directive, or heard any rumor advising agents not to ride on the running boards of the limousine. Conrad Cross, the second black agent, agreed with the running board excuse. Maybe he was just staying with the white code. Mr. Cross did have a long career in the Secret Service. What I can say is that there is video of a white Secret Service agent being waved away from the motorcade vehicle, and it is not by John F. Kennedy. It is by someone who is not in the frame of the lens, somewhere else, someone other than Mr. Kennedy. The agent is trying to go to do his duty, be a shield for Mr. Kennedy, and he is waved away, and then Mr. Kennedy's brains are splattered across his wife. And others, by the way, I forgot that too, and others. They have video of that and people pointing this out. Let's see. As we left, Cross told me he would soon be able to open his own business. I don't know what he meant, and I don't want to speculate. I don't think Brother Cross is going to be any help to you. Indeed. Walters was obviously anxious. His lips quivered as he spoke, and he couldn't stop playing with his necktie. I came to pick up a piece, he said. I need a piece to take care of Jones. The usual suspects are using all the methods available to get their Negra. That's what power looks like. And that's Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly. He told us System of White Supremacy. That's a big part of what J. Edgar Hoover did and had been doing decades before the FBI even existed or the CIA existed. Oh, we're going to get us some Negro informants or whatever you want to call it. We're going to get batches of them, more than you could ever dream. Go around and keep tabs on all your cousins and brothers and sisters and neighbors, pastor and friends, homies. Keep tab. What Leroy up to? What Lakeisha up to? Let us know. Maybe we'll give you a few dollars or whatever, or mess around and get in trouble if you want to. Now we got those charges now. You can give us the information you will, or hey, you got them 5 to 10 years, so make a decision. They got lots of ways, and they got lots and lots and lots more than you could ever dream. Snitches. Whatever you want to call it. Anyway, but that is indeed what power looks like. Domination looks like, for sure. Let's see, folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary, didn't get to share it all, *61, so we do not miss you. Let's see, folks who have commentary on the second portion of the reading. Let's see, retired firefighter Shamika Harris, the confidant, victim in New Jersey, Henry in Chicago, should be with us. If you didn't get to share at all and you have commentary, hand up. Don't wait till the last moment.
Can I be heard?
Henry in Chicago. Yes, sir.
All right. Surprised John Dury. I know my father used to watch Channel 7 News, and as a kid, I used to, kind of watch the news with him. So I do remember John Dury on the news growing up. Bolden's wife told him about letting the attorney, George Howard, talk to the press instead of him. I think that was kind of a bad decision for him to do that. Obviously, I kind of saw that. Even though he was saying a lot of, truthful things. One of the reporters asked him, was race a factor? And obviously he was less confused about it. Yes, it was a factor. He told the truth about a lot of things, but, obviously my question when I was listening to, I was like, he knows that he's not going to be believed, right? Because white race soldiers believe Joseph Spagnoli. So I'm like, they believed the lying criminal, but before they believed him. And obviously, when his attorney found out, he thought that was a very bad decision. His father told him as well that it was a bad decision. That's another thing too. Bolden needs to let his attorney handle, his case. Obviously, when that informant Walters came to the door, Howard told him to make him go away, but he still engaged with them and basically tried to set him up. So you have to let this, you have to let the person who's representing you legally, do the talking and represent you. So, I know, like I said, he's emotional and everything. He's been through a lot, but obviously he has an advocate, for him, even though he's being set up. But, obviously we have to understand that we can't do a lot of talking, especially in this particular situation when he's obviously getting set up to take the fall for something. So I think that's all I have right now in my life.
Much obliged, Henry in Chicago. Listen to your attorney for sure. Let's see, other folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share, line should be open. Proceed.
Yeah, Gus. You know what? Like I'm reading this, listening to this book read, and just even kind of like paying attention to current events, and some of these lies are just kind of like, not even kind of. They're so obvious, especially if you are a student of history. You know what I mean? If you just if you know more history than most, you can spot out these lies in the media. And I think there was a phrase, and I'm real careful with these phrases nowadays because, you don't, you don't know the origin of these phrases, or people get credited for saying things. You're not sure if they said it, but, the phrase that says the bigger the lie, the more the people will believe. White supremacists aren't good liars. They're just powerful. They just force you to believe a lie. Yeah, we lied. What you going to do about it? And that's basically what this JFK story, and also the findings of the killings of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, so, yeah, okay, you go to court, yeah, we lied. Okay, wow, okay, cool. Now what you gonna do about it? And that's the gist of all this. They're not great liars. They just once you found out they lied, they got military might to basically say, what the hell are you gonna do about it? The wife, that was definitely great advice. Where she said, you let your lawyer do the talking, because unfortunately the news outlets that's putting out these stories that you're talking to, they were part of the system. So yeah, they coming around like they're real interested, yeah, tell us what's going on and reporting these stories. But again, powerful white people can shut stories down. So, you're out there, getting the stories out, and you think you're going to counter the white supremacist narrative, but you're not going to beat them you're not going to win when you're trying to use their media apparatuses, their media outlets. It still belongs to them. Everybody was complicit. Law enforcement, media, your people in government, everybody was complicit. I just even remember hearing stories that George Bush, the senior. I'm not never sure if George Bush was a junior, but George Herbert Walker, that he may have had, more dealings, or more, he also was in on this hit on JFK. And I mean, listen, who are we, or who is, Mr. Bolden? Who is he to try to shed light on the incompetence, or maybe how involved the Secret Service may have been in the killing of JFK. I mean, what was Edward Kennedy? I mean, if that was my brother, I don't even know if I could serve in Congress anymore. You know what I'm saying? I'm walking these halls. I don't know who killed my brother, and and I just go on with my political career. He even, attempted to run for president. It was some scandal that made him drop out. But, even his family members participated in the no snitching rule, for them to even just basically still operate in these organizations, Democratic Party and, other political organizations, and knowing that they may have been complicit in killing your family members. So, Mr. Bolden didn't have a chance. I'll close.
He said he didn't have a chance. Hey, they said for a lot of folks, after they seen what happened to Kennedy, you darn right, Mr. Bolden ain't got a chance. They said that attitude, at least on a subconscious level, lots of people got the message. It doesn't matter how you've seen what they did to the most powerful white man in the world. You think they give 2 cents about some no-count, particularly some no-count uppity nigger who's trying to buy a house and snitch on us? You lucky you didn't get your brains blown out too, man. sprinkle some crack on you and call it a day. Say your brothers, robbed you and, Negro on Negro crime in South Side of Chicago, and, moving on. Other folks that we missed, much obliged by. I do want to say quickly, we can't play white people cheap about them being master deceivers. Now, they do have the muscle, Godfather. They got all the tanks and high-powered rifles and weapons of mass destruction. That's true, but they got the weapons of mass destruction. And I would say, hey, I mentioned his name before 2 times. The great Orenthal James. Now, look at how many black people, even many Cal's listeners, including Gus T., who had to come in here and apologize. They didn't have no tanks. They didn't have no nigger knockers. And you gonna say Orenthal James was guilty? You know he killed that white man. You gonna say, I'm gonna lash you 50 times. That didn't happen to me. I don't know no black people that got nigger knockered into believing that Orenthal James was guilty. White people did use other weapons, though. Got old Jeff Toobin a writing. Got old Jeff Toobin a camera. Got old ESPN, and you know he did. 8 hours. So I mean, hey, we can't play them cheap. White people are master deceivers, and that is quite a bit more than just, I beat you. Now, they will beat you, but they got quite a bit more tools than, I'll beat you. Other folks who dialed in, if you have commentary to share, proceed.
May I be heard?
Shamika Harris. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Just right at the confidant, the lady who called in, is that her first time calling in?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm glad to hear her participating in the book club. I think that's pretty nice. Retired firefighter said something about Miranda rights. I think that was him. And I did a Google in Miranda versus Arizona. That happened in 1966, so that was after this. Let me see. Okay, so right at the beginning of Chapter 9, the reporter knocks on Abraham Bolden's door, and he said, I opened the front door but kept the aluminum screen door closed between us. I don't even think he should have opened the door. And anyway, the reporter starts talking to him, and he says, I don't have anything to say to the press right now. I may have a comment later when I find out more about the charges against me. And the white man says, we're here to help you get your side of the story out. Something is fishy about what's happened to you. We've talked to some other agents about you, and some of them feel that you are getting the shaft. Someone else already commented on the shaft. So I'll just say, at the beginning of these events, right, it seems like he knows what he should or shouldn't do. But when a white person says a couple of sentences, he just goes against his first mind. Like, before that lie detector test, he said something like, I'm only going to answer questions that, have to do with the accusations. But then, boom, he answers all the questions, basically. It just, I don't know. Also, his wife, she said, a lot of people are coming by here, and he's like, they want to interview me. And she said, I think you should let George do the talking, right? And that was excellent advice. And also with the lawyer, it's like he doesn't seem to listen to black people, and it's not just Abraham Bolden. It's his non-white people in general, black people in particular. But these are black people who seem to care about him, like, the attempted spouse, the lawyer. He just doesn't really heed what they say. But when white people who don't care about him at all tell him to do something, he hesitates for like 2 seconds, and then he just does it, like Mr. Martineau or the white reporter who knocked on the door. He did the interview, and, he gets, I don't want to use metaphors. He says, I was sweating heavily and breathing hard, having worked myself into a fit of anger. The idea that I could settle some scores at the service now consumed me. And I think this is another example of him getting very emotional. Y'all talked about the running board thing. The thing about that is if you're going to start a rumor like Kennedy was partially responsible for his own death because he ordered that agents not ride on the running boards of his limousine prior to the assassination, that would be really easy to do because he's dead. He can't refute that. When he was getting really emotional with reporters, he said, "None of the reporters interrupted my tirade. When I was finished, I walked to the kitchen to get some water, then came back into the living room and announced the news conference is over." Okay. He walked into the kitchen to get some water and left the news reporters alone in his living room? They could have done anything, like planted some sort of listening device. Who knows what they did? I don't think that was I don't think that was the best way to do that. He should have took his water in there with him beforehand or just waited until they left. Let me see. The father, when he called, he had excellent advice. He said, "I think you should quiet down and not talk so much." Excellent advice. I think that I was thinking, right, about this trial and maybe why he didn't know how to act with the media. And I was thinking, like, hey, had there ever been a televised trial before? Because the first one I could remember was the O.J. Simpson trial. And then I was like, well, what about Ethel and Julius Rosenberg? That wasn't televised. And it seems like the first televised criminal trial was Pamela Smart in 1991. Maybe that's why he didn't like these things that seemed like common sense. He hadn't seen a lot of these sorts of things on TV, so he was just doing what felt like the correct thing to do, and it didn't help him. But maybe we should think about that there hadn't been televised trials back then. And also, Conrad Cross, the agent, the Secret Service agent, he is classified as black. That is all I have right now. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
Much obliged. Was it Mr. Cross that they were? I thought it was somebody else that they were asking about before, who was crying. The agent who was crying. Was it Cross, or I thought it was somebody else they were asking about?
I thought somebody said something like Conrad Cross was a white man. Maybe I misunderstood the comments, but just for anyone who didn't notice, because actually, and maybe I'm putting it out there because I was confused about it. Like when Conrad Cross came up later, I thought he was a white man, and when I reread it, I was like, oh, he's black. I think it's when they said everybody in the office got a copy of that onion skin report except Agent Cross and Abraham Bolden. I thought that was interesting because they're the two black agents and they didn't get copies. But anyway, just for confirmation.
Love it. I thought, because I think we had talked about Cross before. We in detail, like, oh yeah, he's the other. Oh, and the person wrote in, he said Cross had a long career, looked like he just went with the script. Like, you black brothers don't have your back in the workplace. Anyway, much obliged. Yes. Verification, grand. It looks like Ted Bundy's trial was televised. That was in 1979. So, and I think I had heard about that, even though that is a little bit early for me. But it looks like Ted Bundy's trial was televised in 1979 down in Retired Firefighters Way. Do you remember that one, Retired Firefighter? Ted Bundy's trial being on TV down there? Oh, my bad. Let's see. Do you remember the trial down there, 1979?
I think it was kind of close. If not, I don't think it was in Miami, but I could be wrong. But it was in Florida somewhere, I think.
No, it was not in Miami, but it was in Florida.
Yeah, Florida. Yeah, I just can't remember exactly where.
Right on. Did you have any other? Oh, that was in. Never mind. Did you have commentary on the text, sir?
Yes, sir. First thing, you should not give your side of the story to the press or anyone, including on your job. The bottom line is did I violate a rule? Yeah, I mean something like that should be your commentary as far as work is concerned. You don't even speak to the press at all, especially the magnitude of what he was in trouble for. And if it is some such thing as doing that, it's with legal advice, experience advice. He shouldn't even have answered the door. When you have emotions first at decision making, you're probably going to make many mistakes. Anger leads to making a ton of mistakes when you're angry. And besides, he cannot, will not be able to prove any of his allegations about the Secret Service, even if it is the truth. And he all the while just kept doing it over and over and over again, knowing that he is, first of all, he's the only, although it wouldn't help, he's the only black person on the job. So, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of mistakes he made. And I was just wondering, as I'm listening to the report, and I was just wondering, would John Fitzgerald Kennedy defend him like he is defending the former president? And I don't see that happening. If it wasn't a situation where he was assassinated and some other troubles, and plenty of other troubles that could have happened to Mr. Bolden, that John F. Kennedy would have came to his defense. I don't think that really would have happened. His lawyer is, in my opinion, is very professional and correct with his advice. Every time he comes up in the report, he is on it correctly with the advice that he gives. His dad also gave great advice. Stop talking, please. In my mind, I would hold my mouth to saying "shut up," but that is the more rougher comment to make to somebody who's talking too much. The visit he got from the informant was a setup, and that's all I have.
Much obliged. Retired firefighter in Florida. Actually, when I looked, the child mega killings, the trial actually was in Dade County. How wacky. Unless that's in error. I have to double check to verify. That looks like it was in Dade County. Oh, it was in Miami. Isn't that crazy? The trial was in Miami. Strive for accuracy. Anyway, and they got pictures and all. Strive for accuracy. Anyway, let's see. Other folk, did we miss anybody? The Confidant, did you have commentary to share before we wrap? She might have been muted or just listening for the second portion. Let's see.
Hello, yes, and I wanted to thank Shamika for her kind and thoughtful words. I appreciate that. The only comment that has my wheels turning in my brain is I'm trying to assess Mr. Bolden's personality. I'm wondering, because I have not come into the book until this point, is his style. He seems to be needing to be accepted. He appears to be equating himself to be as if he believes there's justice and that he is going to achieve it and that getting on, by being on the media, I don't think he's playing this smart. And I would caution us to be more strategic in how we approach things of this nature or in our daily lives. I'm just wondering what's going on here with him. I haven't figured it out, but that's what I'm paying attention to, and those are my only comments on my line. Thank you.
Much obliged. The confidant. I will say he thinks that basically everyone is basically fair. F word. And Mr. Bolden is still with us. He is still with us in his 90s. He is still with us at the time of this recording. But I have heard interviews. Normally, I like to play audio of the author, and we have ways to go in the book, so we will hear directly from Mr. Bolden. In fact, I was so, proud of my work in finding several of these interviews that, took some diligence to locate. But then they had the April Fool's Day. No joking. All that CIA, how could I leave that out? So I had to play that then. And really, even if that hadn't happened, I was going to play material from the movie Executive Action, which came out in 1973, which is almost, contemporary with these events, in time. But that film came out that Mark Lane wrote the screenplay to, and that movie disappeared. It has so many of the key points that he has raised are in that movie that was disappeared for decades. They talk about the Secret Service agents being lax, drinking out at the club. They talk about how this is a violation of all codes. They talk about the vehicle that he's in, the motorcade, that's a violation, all codes, and not following the rules, not doing what they're supposed to, and not having the service agents there, not having enough agents to provide protection. They even get in detail about those Secret Service badges. How many agents we're going to have with the fake badges and where they're going to be stationed at, and all of that in great detail. And in fact, you get to the end of Executive Action, which is now on YouTube, but it was lost for like 25 years. Lost. You get to the end, they're playing pool. Put that on Dr. Welsing. The white men who organized all of this, very powerful, they're playing pool and watching on TV as Jack Ruby assassinates Lee Harvey Oswald. And so they go to turn the TV off, like, oh, all right, that's that. everything is done now. And one of the white men, he says, man, it is so outrageous. I don't know how anyone will believe this. And they just turn the TV off and get to playing pool. And you hear another white man, he speaks, he says, they will believe what the brother, that they will believe what they are told. They'll be sad and blah, 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 but I mean, hey, Next day, Monday. This is on Sunday, Monday. LBJ president, moving forward. The other thing, the caller who raised the point, I think that was retired firefighter with JFK, would he have done all this for Mr. Bolden? Hey, Robert Kennedy was still alive at this time. This was y'all's boy. Y'all wanted to send him to language school in Chicago and all the rest of it. Like, dang, y'all did all that caping to get him in the Secret Service. Rob, do you think, yo nigger Abraham, do you think he was out here pilfering Secret Service documents? Did Robert Kennedy, reach out? He had some time left on the planet. Did he try to? I think he was, in fact, still in the Department of Justice. I have a double check to make sure he hadn't left yet, but did he do anything to help out Brother Bolden? Can't say you was still grieving. I think the caller had said before, hey, at the end of the day, you even see Robert Kennedy. Isn't he in the Kennedy administration right now? They are still a part of all of this. You don't see the Kennedy family out there snitching left and right, and you see what they did, Brother John, and we ain't forgot nothing. No snitching. Anyway, but Abraham Bolden, we will include as we proceed. I was so excited to include Mr. Bolden, and we haven't even got him yet. More to come. Man, I think you all covered most of the commentary that I would have added about being emotional and so much of that workplace racism. We talk about that on a regular basis. There was other criticism of the Secret Service that did come up amongst others at the time, but a lot of that was quieted down. And I do think Mr. Bolden could have easily been killed. I guess we'll have to see. Man, you're a black person at this time especially, and you get put in greater confinement. Oh my God. Like, this happened years before Fred Hampton was killed in Chicago. I easily think Mr. Bolden could have been killed. Easily. We have to see the rest of the book, but I think that's probably what even that with the gun. You get this informative, hey, you got a piece of it, and he might have given him the gun and shot Bolden. Said that we had a tussle over the gun, and he went crazy, and his eyes was bulging. He was talking about raping a white woman, and I had to shoot him. End of story. But I think they intended to have him killed, because there was a whole lot of white people who died, who had things to say about the Kennedy assassination that didn't agree. They talked about some of that at the hearing on Monday, or April Fool's Day, excuse me. But they just talked about that. So I think Mr. Bolden easily could have been on that list. We'll keep that in mind as we read. Let's see. Man, I wish we had asked Mr. Fuller about that, man. Do you remember them making Secret Service? But do you still have your badge? Like, that would have been cool to see, as well. Whatever. I'm going to see if I can get those Newsweek articles and the Chicago Tribune articles, because they do have that at the library. That would be cool to see, because he said they made it like front. I think he said the Newsweek was like front page. Like, dang, that would be cool. I think that'd be good. Let's see if we get that for next week. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. All this could have been way worse. Mr. Bolden had, we taken the flight and I got to get 3-4 tequilas and all the like, oh my God, way worse. He had been a little tipsy. Informant come to you got a piece, and I'm not even what? We need fully functioning brain computers so that we can make great decisions. You never know when you might have to make a life-saving decision. Creator, help us use our time and energy to replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Remind us not to waste non-white people's time and energy, including our own. Stop name-calling black people. Stop being discourteous to black people. Stop name-calling black people. Stop producing throwaway offspring. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. MLK Day.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.